Drake Maye versus Baker Mayfield in a big NFC West showdown. Those are just two of the games in a jam-packed Week 10. The Ultimate NFL pregame show starts right now.
It's the Ultimate NFL pregame show. Every team, every game, every angle. The local experts of the Locked On Podcast Network going head-to-head on every matchup. It's the Ultimate NFL pregame show. Unprecedented insight, unrivaled passion, and unsurpassed knowledge. It's the Ultimate NFL pregame show. The Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Week 10 in the NFL is officially here, and we have everything you need to know heading into the weekend from the local experts across the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Kevin Ostreicher of Locked On Ravens, and from the primetime game of the Steelers and the Chargers to the big 4:25 and 4 o'clock window matchup between the Rams and the 49ers to why that Patriots and Buccaneers game has game of the week potential. We're going to go game by game to make you the most informed fan for game day with the help of our local experts across the Locked On Podcast Network. Really exciting for Week 10's action here. There are plenty of storylines to dive into. I want to first tell everyone that today's episode of the Ultimate NFL pregame show is brought to you by Gametime. Down the Gametime app, create an account and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Let's start with the 9:30 a.m. game. We have the Indianapolis Colts and the Atlanta Falcons. The Colts got a little bit of a reality check after losing to the Pittsburgh Steelers in week number 9, and the Falcons are going to hope to hand them another loss. So Aaron Freeman of Locked On Falcons and Zach Hicks of Locked On Colts talk about key storylines and so much more.
Alrighty, Locked On Everydayers, we're back with this crossover Thursday. Locked On Colts, Locked On Falcons, Zach Hicks and Aaron Freeman talking about this big Germany game coming up on Sunday. And again, I'm going to throw it to Aaron here to start off here. Falcons' 3 most important keys to victory. I think one of them is going to be slowing down Jonathan Taylor, but I'll let you take it away here, Aaron.
Yeah, well, I'm not even going to put that in the keys to victory because I know they're not going to do that. So, but sort of, I guess building off of that one point is Bijan needs to have a better rushing day than Jonathan Taylor. Like, that's the key. If you can get Bijan, if you give up 150 yards to Jonathan Taylor, if you get Bijan to 160, that to me, I think is going to be huge for the Falcons to get this thing going. Because as I said, I'm expecting a big day for Jonathan Taylor. So if you can get a big day from Bijan Robinson, then I think that will be huge for the Falcons' offense success and taking some of that pressure off of Michael Penix to have to carry the team on the road. You mentioned turnovers at the beginning of the show. That's been something that the Colts have done a really good job of, but they have been behind in turnover margin, both of their losses this year and very much ahead of it in all of their wins. And the Falcons are a team that turnovers often are basically what's going to decide the factor. They were ahead last week against the Patriots, and it was the first time they had lost a game where they had a positive turnover margin under Raheem Morris. They're 8-1 over the last year and a half. They're 1-9 when they're a negative turnover margin, and they're about 2-4, I believe, when they're even. So basically, that turnover margin really dictates the results of these games. So that's my second key to victory. And then the third one is a fast start. The Falcons are 3-1 when they score on the opening drive this year. They're 0-4 when they don't. And one of the things we've talked about on Locked On Falcons is like you kind of know by the end of the second series for the Falcons offense if they're going to win a game or not. Like if they are sluggish in the first 2 series, it's like, oh, we're in for a long day. Now, they did not score on either the opening 2 drives last week, I think, against New England. But they did sort of climb their way back into that game, but it was just a little too far of a hill to climb when they were down like 21-7 at halftime. So, like, I think if they can get off to a better start, particularly on the road, that will be huge for this team and allow them to kind of do the things that they were able to do against the Bills, where they were able to kind of get off to an early lead and kind of dictate the tempo of that game and force a team like Indianapolis to kind of march to the beat of the Falcons drum as opposed to marching to the beat of the Colts drum.
Yeah, absolutely. And I feel like you just took my typical 3 points that I make every week. So I'm going to actually reiterate that start fast point for my first one with the Colts here, because that's just been so vital for every team this year, but especially the Colts. They've taken the ball first in almost all of their games this year because they want to put points on the board, put that pressure on opposing teams. And a big part of their game plan is we pass early to score points, and then we run you into the ground late to win the games. So you're not going to get much Jonathan Taylor in that first quarter or that second quarter. So for a big part for the Colts' success is get that early success with Daniel Jones, build up that lead, and then if you go into the halftime with a lead, you get Jonathan Taylor the entire second half. And as you have said multiple times on here, that's going to be tough for the Falcons to overcome. So for the Colts, build up that lead early, especially go into half with a lead, and then you can give the Falcons all the Jonathan Taylor they can handle in the second half. You made a great point about turnovers as well. The Colts have 8 turnovers on offense, and their 2 losses. In their 7 wins, they've only turned the ball over once in those games. So that's going to be vital. I think for the Colts defense, it's really just taking that ball away and making sure that they're not the team that makes the mistake. Again, when you're the favored team in a slugfest, like early game overseas, you just don't want to do the things that swing games against your win probability. So special teams mistakes, turning the ball over on offense, not capitalizing on turnovers on defense. So I guess the overall point here I'm making with the Colts is like, just play a clean game. Play a clean game. Don't have the pre-snap penalties. Don't miss kicks. Don't, drop interceptions. Be as clean as you can, and that's how you can take care of business here. And then I'm just going to swing it back again to Daniel Jones here, where Daniel Jones had his worst game of the year for the Colts this past week against the Pittsburgh Steelers. 5 turnovers when, again, he had 3 turnovers in the previous 8 games for the Colts when they got off to that 7-1 start. Make sure that New York Giants Daniel Jones does not show up after that. Make sure that gets back on track, back into Colts Daniel Jones. Again, I know the Germany game is weird. Just make sure that it doesn't kind of just continue that trend. We want that to be a weird regression game in the other way. We don't want that to be the new trend for this Colts team. That's going to be the biggest part for this one. But Aaron, I think we're going to have a fun one, even though it's again, these early morning games, they have been ugly at times, slugfest. But we have 2 running backs that are fun to watch, so maybe it'll just be like a big run-heavy game for our 2 teams.
Maybe we'll see. All I ask when the Falcons get on national television, and technically this is not a primetime game, but for everybody who's going to be up early in the morning, at least stateside, all eyes will be on that game. All I ask when it comes to the Atlanta Falcons, don't embarrass me when everybody's watching us. And so the last time they played overseas was in 23. Desmond Ridder. Those terrible picks against the Jacksonville Jaguars, and it's like, oh, this is the worst. And so I just, I don't need the Falcons to beat the Colts. I just need you to play just a competitive, not weird, typical Falcon game, and that so often is too much to ask from this football team. But we'll see if we get that on Sunday.
Isn't a typical Falcons game just weird though? Like, isn't that kind of what you guys do? Miss kicks and weird turnovers and missed extra. Like, it's just kind of what even this year. Like, it's just been the poor Falcons curse. It's like when I was talking with the Chargers guy earlier this year. I'm like, just make sure that you let the Chargers do their chargering, and you'll be able to win the game. I kind of feel like I have to say the same thing with the Falcons. Just let the Falcons do their thing. Yes. And you should be able to win the game.
Yeah, the Chargers are the West Coast version of the Falcons. The Falcons are the East Coast version of the Chargers. They're basically the same team.
Not just because we have a couple extra seconds here. We talk about primetime embarrassments, though. At least you don't have that epic collapse against the Vikings that we had in 2022. Now, we were able to laugh about it because we were all the worst teams in football when it happened, but at least you didn't blow a 30-something point lead. Oh, well, the person I'm talking to. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to set it up that way, but it could have been worse.
Zach.
It could have been worse, I guess. Look, at least we all have our love of Matt Ryan. We don't have any hate for Matt Ryan here in Indy. You guys obviously love Matt Ryan, so we have that to bond over.
There you go. Kirk Cousins engineered that comeback as well.
Yeah.
So
that's true. Yeah. It all comes full circle. I apologize to all Falcons fans listening. I did not mean to invoke that. I was purely just joking about the Colts, and I forgot about the trauma that you guys went through. So I hope you guys have healed.
Nothing bad has ever happened to the Atlanta Falcons in a February football game or anything like that.
Yeah, that's true. Hey, at least you were there in February, I guess, but I can't imagine anything. We had the Halliburton thing happen in Indy, we have our own heartbreak. So
you can check out Zach over at Locked On Colts and Aaron over at Locked On Falcons, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. The 1 o'clock window of games, the Patriots and the Buccaneers. You got Drake Maye, who's playing at an unbelievable pace right now in his second season. Meanwhile, Baker Mayfield, he's playing lights out himself. It's almost an MVP conversation battle at this point. So you have Nick Cattles of Locked On Patriots and James Yarko of Locked On Bucks, talking about which MVP candidate will come out on top.
Wrapping things up here on a crossover Thursday episode of Locked On Patriots and Locked On Bucks. And this crossover Thursday is presented by PrizePicks. Download the PrizePicks app today. Use code Locked On NFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Nick, what do the Patriots need to do in order to get this road win and extend their win streak to 7?
All right, so I'll quickly run through my three keys for the Patriots. Number one, I think you need some production. You mentioned them earlier. You need some production from Travion Henderson in this run game. Also, Terrell Jennings. I would not be surprised if Terrell Jennings, gets even more opportunity this weekend against Tampa. He runs hard. He's kind of just a tunnel vision runner. He's not going to bounce things out, but he's gonna run hard straight forward and get you some extra yards off it. But if you can get production from your run game with Travion Henderson and Terrell Jennings, with Ramondre Stevenson, who I think is likely going to be out. He didn't practice last week, missed the game. He did not practice on Wednesday. He has a toe injury. We don't know if it's turf toe. We have no idea what it is. But if you can do that, then I feel like Tampa can't necessarily pin their ears back consistently, right? They can't go bananas and go after Drake Maye if you can have some first and second down success. The other thing I would say, and this is kind of low-hanging fruit, is just limit your mistakes. You're on the road. Tampa, I think is one of the two best teams you faced this year. The only other one is Buffalo, and Buffalo mentioned that earlier. So that means, make sure you're not getting a lot of flags thrown on you on Sunday, so you don't give extra possessions or extra downs to Tampa. Don't make those kinds of mistakes and turnovers. Again, it's kind of low-hanging fruit, but, the Patriots, they've had 7 turnovers between the Pittsburgh game and the Atlanta game. That's why they lost to Pittsburgh. And when you look at the Atlanta game, that's why Atlanta hung around. I mean, the Patriots were about to go up by who knows how much right before halftime. And then you get the fumble from Maye, and then the return all the way inside like the 5-yard line. Atlanta scores a touchdown instead of being down by, 3 touchdowns possibly at halftime. Now they're down by 1 touchdown. And then Drake comes out and throws an interception, early in the second half as well. So you got to limit those turnovers. And the third thing I would say is, you want to see if you can erase Ibuka. I know you mentioned him. We talked about him a little bit, but I do think if you can limit Ibuka, I don't think Tampa has a ton at their disposal in this passing game right now. So if you can slow him down, if you give up one shot to somebody else, okay, you can survive that. But you have to go into Sunday saying to yourself, Emeka Ibuka can't kill us. He can't, as you said, he can't Drake London us. Because if he Drake Londons us, this game could be, this could be really difficult for us to win. And I think it's going to be difficult for them to win to begin with. So they've got to do their best job against Ibuka and remain disciplined against him.
Yeah, and if they eliminate Ibuka, there's going to be a whole lot of other players that Patriots fans have probably never heard of that are going to be catching the ball. You have Tez Johnson, Cam Johnson, Ryan Miller. I think the other guy would have to be Cade Otton, right? He's continued to get more involved in the passing game. But yeah, if they are able to limit and contain Ibuka, that's going to go a really, really long way in their ability to get a win on the road. All right, for the Bucks, I'm going to do one on offense, one on defense. On offense, you have to give Baker time. I'm saying that for the second crossover episode in a row, but he's been under relentless pressure the last 2 games, and it shows.
Yeah.
Not only that, but that pressure continues to build throughout the game. You combine that with his injury, and he just hasn't looked the same as he did the first month and a half of the season. Vrabel knows how to bring the heat. This offensive line has got to be ready. We've talked about their struggles against the Saints last week, Tristan and Charlie Heck, and the matchups that they have. The Patriots are top 10 in interceptions this year in the NFL when pressuring the quarterback. They've racked up 20 sacks to go along with 7 interceptions. Tristan Wirfs has to return to form. The whole line struggled against the Lions. These guys have got to get it together to give Baker the time to throw and start opening up some run lanes to at least show the threat that they're willing to run the ball against one of the better run defense. Defensively for the Bucs, it's about how quickly you can make the offense of the Patriots one-dimensional. That's when Bowles is going to be able to draw up a lot of different looks and cause some confusion and frustration for Drake Maye. We saw him do it to Spencer Rattler and Tyler Shuck in their last game. Drake May's way better than those guys. But Bowles also did it to Jared Goff the week before. So he has a way of finding the right looks to throw off even seasoned veterans. You bring that pressure, you bring those disguises, you're going to create opportunities for a defense that has been loaded with ball hawks the last couple of games. 2 takeaways against the Lions, 4 against the Saints. 1 resulted in a touchdown. 2 more should have been touchdowns that were wrongfully blown dead. But that's what this team has been feeding off of. I expect that to continue this week.
Yeah, I mean, it'll be an interesting game. I don't give my prediction on the crossover, but I will say, until I give that final prediction on Friday's episode, I have to look at it and say, well, you lean Tampa. I mean, I think that's the only fair way to look at this is you lean Tampa. This game will be in Tampa. Again, one of the best teams, one of the top 2 teams the Patriots have faced. Baker Mayfield is somebody who I absolutely love watching play. He is just, everybody knows, competitive gene through the roof. And you always feel like he's just never going to die on the football field. Like he's going to find a way. There could be 7 minutes left, and you still got to make sure you drive the stake through his heart. So, and this defense is a tremendous, tremendous challenge, especially that front and Todd Bowles and his defensive mind. So I would lean Tampa right now. Will I stay that way? Friday's episode, I'm just not sure. You're going to have to check it out, James.
Yeah, and I'm with you. I won't give my prediction until my Friday episode either, but the Bucs 2.5-point favorites, over under 48.5. I don't know. This could go a lot of different ways. I think it's going to be one of the better games of the week. I also lean Tampa. I think coming off of the bye, even though Todd Bowles is not historically good coming off of the bye, I think that got these guys healthy enough to return back to the way that they looked the first 6 weeks of the season. Again, we'll see how things shake out the rest of the week. But yeah, I don't know. We could end up seeing a repeat of the Bucs Seahawks, where it's just the Drake Maye, Baker Mayfield show, and it's an absolute duel of 2 high-scoring teams and 2 quarterbacks that were basically able to do whatever they wanted with the football. It's going to be a really good one.
Be sure to find Nick over at Locked On Patriots and James over at Locked On Bucs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Next up, the Baltimore Ravens have found themselves a little bit, as have the Minnesota Vikings. Both teams will match up together in week number 10 to hope to keep the momentum going. So Luke Braun of Locked On Vikings and myself, Kevin Ostreicher of Locked On Ravens, talk about which team who has the momentum is going to keep it.
All right, Kevin. So now we kind of get to the part where we have to predict how stuff will go. And I think the best way to approach that is to look at the problems that have plagued the Ravens and Vikings and ask which ones are least likely to show up. Like, you're not going to find Cooper Rush problems in this game, but those problems have been a big reason why the Ravens are 3-5 going into this one. So have the Ravens really found that stride, or are there still a lot of growing pains and weird stuff that they have to figure out? Because when they were healthy, they started 0-2 as well. Have they figured out the stuff that led to that, or are there still concerns that maybe are going to keep plaguing them all year?
Yeah, I think the big concern is on the O-line with the guard positions with Daniel Falele and Andrew Voorhees. And it's not just them. I mean, the O-line has been kind of in a bad place all season. Roger Rosengarten has regressed from year 1 to year 2. Ronnie Stanley's been in and out of the lineup with injuries. And it's those little like annoying things where like he'll go out for a series or 2 and then come back, or he'll, have to miss a game and come back. So, he hasn't had as many snaps this season. But to me, I think that for the Ravens, if they cannot protect Lamar Jackson, they're not going to win. And we've seen that where consistent and constant pressure has sometimes come up in Lamar Jackson's face, but Lamar's one of the best quarterbacks in the league and almost masking poor offensive line play, because with a lot of those statue quarterbacks like we talked about earlier in the show, there's not a lot of time for them to escape. They just, all right, hey, I'm laying down here. You got me. For Lamar, he's always going to try to extend the play and make something happen. So that's one. And then obviously defensively, one of the things that Baltimore does is they play very soft coverage regardless of circumstance on some of these drives, where it just feels like they'll play 7 or 8 yards off the ball and the opponent will be like, okay. And they'll just run a quick slant and pick up 8 yards and like, all right, we're just going to work down the field this way. I don't care. And that's kind of, again, with the Ravens bend, don't break. They're always going to play a guy deep. They're going to have guys in the back to make sure you don't beat them with long throws. So that's part of their philosophy anyway. But with the lack of pass rush they've seen at times this season, them playing off coverage and then having no resistance up front has been a recipe for disaster, which, again, the blitzing has certainly helped with that because they've forced quarterbacks to get the ball out. And so one of the things you talked about in the second part of the show was just about like that short passing game, screenplays to combat the blitz. And that's actually, the Ravens got beat a couple of times on Thursday night by Miami. Just, Tua throwing the ball out to Devon Achane on a screen where they had 8 defenders up the field. And all of a sudden you have like just 1 or 2 Ravens that can be there to help get the ball carrier down. So I think that for Baltimore, they need to, because the pass rush and secondary, they're tied at the hip. If you rush the passer and you get to the quarterback quickly, it lessens the time that secondary members have to cover, which we talked about. Guys just can't cover for 6, 7, 8 seconds every single play. But if you can cover for that long, you get the coverage sacks. And it feels like Baltimore hasn't really had the best of both worlds. They've had the worst of both worlds in a lot of these games. So getting back on track there and continuing the momentum that we've seen over the past couple of weeks, because this is a different defense than we saw before the bye week. Zach Ward, their defensive coordinator, made that very clear that they worked on a lot of their pressure packages and blitz packages and essentially said, we're not going to just watch you just dice us up with us rushing 4 and getting no pressure. We're going to bring the pressure to you and make you make a throw or make you make a play. And so far, they've played the Bears and the Dolphins, which aren't exactly like the 2 top teams in the league or anything like that. But, you play who's in front of you and you get momentum. So I think that, to me, it's the offensive line play as well as the defense in terms of just getting pressure and making sure that you can get it consistently and not let JJ McCarthy sit back there and gain confidence.
And you know what? I think at a lot of times this season, you could put the Vikings in a category with those 2 teams in kind of the bottom of the league. And I think you would have been right to do so. The vibes are different now coming off this upset win over the Lions. And I think for the Vikings, a big theme of the year has been the energy. And you really saw it on Thursday night with Carson Wentz dissolving and falling apart in real time. But you could really tell that the energy wasn't there, that the Vikings had kind of, they got punched in the mouth and they didn't get up. And the energy was weird in that international trip too. And there's been a lot of talk about how that probably wasn't a good idea to do 2 countries back to back and how they kind of regret that trip. Nobody will say that out loud, but you can tell that they do. Because they complained quite a bit about the stamina and how kind of gritty, how much grit it took just to get a game off, let alone win it against the Browns. Which you're welcome, by the way.
Yeah,
couldn't get the Steelers for you, but we got the Browns. And we got the Bengals, which I guess those aren't the ones you needed, but we got them.
All right, take what you can get.
But like the energy has been really sleepy in a lot of this. It's been really like kind of stuffed up and stodgy, and the energy in the locker room after that Lions game, it's a shot in the arm. And suddenly there is a different energy to the Vikings. And so the hope is that a lot of these, hey, pass rushers can't win a rep, pass blockers can't win a rep, the receivers aren't getting open as much as you should, as you expect them to with how good those players are. And like all that stuff was kind of true. Not to mention the bad quarterback play and the play calling issues, like everything was going wrong. And with the guy back and a lot of the healthier players back, the team really feels like, okay, no, this is what we were supposed to be. So they're looking at that Lions game going, this is what we expected. All that stuff was a fluke and are trying to put this behind them. But as 3-5 as the Ravens are, this is no slouch. And there's a reason that the Ravens are favored pretty heavily on the road by 4.5 on FanDuel. So for me, I don't blame the market for favoring the team that way because there's still quite a bit of question around the Vikings, around McCarthy, and what they can do. But to me, it's really going to come down to whose problems, who has identified the real problems and solved them. And if you did look at it and say, well, it was just because we were injured, it was just because we were international, it was just because we didn't have our quarterback. If you do look at those, you better hope that you were right. That's what I feel like this game comes down to.
Yeah, there are so many circumstances and situations where for Baltimore and Minnesota, it's finding out, are you for real or are you not? And I think this is a good test for both teams because I think you made a lot of good points about similarities where it's like, you mentioned the energy for the Ravens. It felt like for the first month and a half of the season, every camera cut was to a dejected Raven or an injured Raven, or like felt like they were.
You'd see it. They're just sad because it's like we aren't supposed to be getting killed like this.
Yeah, and it's just like, I'm sure like it was just a shock to both these.
Yeah,
we're not supposed to be here right now. Like, this isn't us. And so to get back on track, to get confidence, like one win truly. Like, I know it's kind of like, oh, it's just one win, but one win can truly change the trajectory of a year, if not just for the vibes. And like people are saying, oh, vibes, who cares about vibes? Are important. Like it matters what goes on in the locker room and how you're feeling. Are you showing up to these games just being like, all right, here we go again? Are you showing up with the, hey, we can do this thing because we've shown we can do it? So this is a good test for both teams, and I think it's going to be a really good game.
I can only hope that the Vikings keep everything within range, and then maybe we can get some more hero moments from the young quarterback, because those are always exciting. Kevin, thank you so much. Everybody, Vikings fans, go check out Locked On Ravens, and Ravens fans, you are, of course, welcome. Kevin, there's one last thing I want to ask you for. I feel like score predictions are so last decade, but on Locked On Vikings every Friday, we do a bold prediction segment, and if I read one and it's right, and if I find it bold enough and then it hits, I will donate $20 to a charity of that listener's choice, and I want to give you the chance to get in on that. So what is a bold prediction that you have for this? If you nail it, I'll donate $20 to, I assume, a Baltimore area charity of your choice.
Yeah, okay. Okay, you know what? I've wanted to use this one for a while, so I'm going to do it. I'm going to do Patrick Ricard anytime touchdown.
Oh, baby. Let's take a look at the odds on that at FanDuel.
Fullback touchdowns.
Oh, we are scrolling down. Patrick, where is he?
Is he
plus 4,500?
Yes.
That's amazing.
Yes.
Certainly bold enough. All right, Patrick Ricard, anytime touchdown. We'll put it down. I could definitely see the Vikings losing track of a fullback on the goal line.
He's been a touchdown guy for them before. It could happen. You never know when he's going to strike. It could be this week.
Love it. That is higher odds than Ty Felton, who does not play. All of the tight ends and both of the defenses.
Oh,
that's crazy.
There's a chance. Be sure you check out Luke over at Locked On Vikings. You can check me out over at Locked On Ravens, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. The Bills and Dolphins, an AFC East matchup, two teams in very different spots right now. The Bills, they're going to hope to catch up with the Patriots. To do that, they have to beat the Dolphins, and the Dolphins are just trying to find anything right now. So Joe Marino of Locked On Bills and Kyle Krabs of Locked On Dolphins take you through key storylines and so much more.
Keys to victory. 3 keys to victory for the Buffalo Bills against the Miami Dolphins in Week 10 at Hard Rock Stadium, in what's going to be a team that's wearing a lot of red and blue, or the stands that's going to be wearing a lot of red and blue. I saw what the Baltimore game looked like. Tua said after the game, crowd noise kind of messed us up there on 4th and 1 at home against Baltimore. I know how this fan base travels. Go ahead. Keys to victory.
Yeah, I think
make a lot of noise when Miami has the ball, right?
Probably a nice contingency of people in Western New York that are looking forward to a trip to South Florida here in November. 3 things for me regarding the Bills in this game is, number 1, don't beat yourself. The Bills, when they have their hiccups against opponents they're supposed to beat, I think the Bills are 9.5-point road favorites in this game. You can't beat yourself with penalties and giveaways. And they've typically been pretty clean, but those moments do come up. And I think that's your fastest way to keeping Miami in the game is penalties. That's put your offense behind the sticks, and giveaways that obviously take away possessions. Number 2 is you got to start fast and take control of the game script. The Bills, when they've had their most success against Miami in games that aren't as close as they can be, it's because they get on top of them. They invite Miami to a track meet and force Miami to a drop back passing game. And so whatever you can do to get that fast start and get that lead and put Miami in chase mode, I think that's when Miami's at their worst and when obviously Buffalo's at its best. And then number 3, a little bit more specific to this matchup, is be ready to handle the blitz. Miami's 5th in blitz rate so far this year. In Week 3, Miami blitzed 47% of the time, which is 13% higher than their top 5 blitz rate. And Josh, when was blitzed, he was 8 of 14 for 53 yards and a touchdown. When he wasn't blitzed, he was 14 of 14 for 160 yards and 2 touchdowns. So I have a feeling that they're going to want to to get their blitz stuff going. They have extra time ahead of this game to maybe work in some new wrinkles. And I think everyone saw the Falcons game. And it's the challenges that the Bills' protection schemes and Josh Allen had against the blitz. I think there's obviously been a better story to tell throughout the course of the year. He handled the blitz against Spags just fine last week. But there have been some shaky moments, and I'm sure that Miami should prioritize stressing that and seeing what type of chaos they can create.
Yeah, I think when Miami has from Miami's side of things, keys to victory here is you got to figure out how to put a lid on the tight ends in the passing game, which is easier said than done watching Kansas City and Steve Spagnuolo try to do it this past week. But there's been too many incidences this season. Go back to the Chargers game and Oronde Gadsden II in a big moment. The Cleveland Browns with Harold Fannin in some spots. Mark Andrews in the red zone just this past week on Thursday. Poor matchups, poor personnel matchups when you want to try to bring and facilitate some pressure. You're getting bad matchups with who is dropping into areas that are responsible for the tight ends. And Minkah Fitzpatrick can be a big piece of that. Hopefully Jason Marshall can play this week as a nickel, which would then free them to do some man coverage stuff with Minkah to take Dalton Kincaid and take those assignments. And you're going to take your chances, right? And that's one of the few that you can look at the matchups on the back end and say, hey, if we have somebody that can try to hang with Dalton Kincaid in some big spots when we bring pressure, Minkah's about as good of a choice that they have to take your chances and try to get some wins in that regard. So I think that's a big piece of the puzzle. I would point to overall the tackling. Through the first 7 weeks of the season, the Dolphins were the worst tackling team in football. I mean, they were an atrocious tackling team. It's actually been better the last 2 weeks against Atlanta and Baltimore, and part of that progress is winning at the point of attack and winning at the line of scrimmage. This Bills offensive line has a lot of reps together. They've got a lot of impact. They can create a lot of movement. How it all fits now with Jalen Phillips not being in the picture, I think is massive. But you've kind of started to see Anthony Weaver with a young unit have some things click into place. I'm really excited for a second evaluation opportunity for Jordan Phillips and Kenneth Grant, the Dolphins, Jordan Phillips and Kenneth Grant, for what that play looks like as the second divisional game. This is the first of the 3 repeat matchups against AFC East opponents for Miami this year for a group that's young, and they've needed those guys to take the first 6-7 weeks of the season to kind of click in and play
6-7. Yeah, 6-7.
6-7. Thank you. Caught me that.
Well, that was an organic one, dude. I wasn't going to let that slide on by.
I caught you yesterday on NFL scouting. It was a 6-7 swap of picks, and I hit you with it. So
yeah, I got it.
Keeping me honest.
Yep.
And then offensively for Miami, run the damn ball. I'm sorry, run the football. You came out and you ran more gap scheme runs against Atlanta than you have ever called in 3.5 seasons under Mike McDaniel, right? And you had rousing success. You go heavy personnel. You are able to kind of change the strength, and you're pulling offensive linemen with 6 offensive linemen on the field because Julian Hill's down. And you kind of have this big matchup opportunity with personnel against a smaller front, and you have success. And Buffalo, they've been more diverse with their personnel this year than what they've been in years past, but they are still at their core, right? A 4-2-5 with Taron Johnson as the nickel player, and if he's healthy to play. They like to play that style of defense. That's kind of their bread and butter and who they have been historically. So you call 20-plus gap scheme runs against the Atlanta Falcons, and then you come out against Baltimore, you call 5 gap scheme runs the entire game. Run the ball, put the 6th offensive lineman out there, play heavy, embrace a clock possession, methodical approach. Don't call a game to score 30 points. If you call a game to score 30 points, you're going to lose by 3 touchdowns, and you're going to be down 17 points at halftime. And you'll be looking at the clock saying, what do we do at halftime to come back from this? And that's when these games between these two teams get off the rails with this guy as the head coach of the football team in Miami, that's what happens, and you pour gasoline on the fire after the first mistake happens and it compounds.
Don't play the game the Bills want you to play, which is that.
Yes.
Yeah, that's the game the Bills want you to play. If you're down 2 scores, you still have to run the ball.
Run the ball.
Yeah, you cannot get away from it. especially with how the Bills rush looks right now. Their pass rush looks with Bosa and Rousseau. They're playing at a high level against, Patrick Ball, I think has been a nice young player, but at right tackle, Larry Borum, and how the Bills will stress, protection schemes lately with some really creative stuff. Don't get into it. Don't run the ball. And I think that'll give Miami their best chance.
And then you can build your play action passing off of that, try to take some shots to Jalen Waddle, make sure he gets 10 targets in this game. I think that's the recipe for Miami to have a chance to win.
Joe can be found over at Locked On Bills, and Kyle can be found over at Locked On Dolphins, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Still plenty of 1 p.m. action for week number 10 to get into. So coming up here on the Ultimate NFL Pregame Show, we'll be talking about what other teams are facing off and who is going to get a win. So be sure to stay tuned. Plenty coming your way on the Ultimate NFL Pregame Show. First, the show is brought to you by Mint Mobile. If you're still overpaying for wireless, it's time to say yes to saying no. And Mint Mobile, their favorite word is no. No contracts, no monthly bills, no overages, no hidden fees, no BS. I said yes to making the switch and getting premium wireless for just $15 a month. Mint makes it simple. All plans come with high-speed data and unlimited talk and text delivered on the nation's largest 5G network. You can even bring your own phone and keep your same number and contacts. Now, I love that you're getting the same quality service you had before, but for a fraction of the price, and the setup is super easy. You kept your number, and then you're running in minutes. Ready to say yes to saying no? Make the switch at mintmobile.com/lockedonnfl. That's mintmobile.com/lockedonnfl. Upfront payment of $45 required, equivalent to $15 a month. Limited time new customer offer for first 3 months only. Speeds may slow above 35 gigabytes on a limited plan. Taxes and fees extra. See Mint Mobile for details. Moving along on the Ultimate NFL Pregame Show, Kevin Oestreicher is still here with you, diving into all of Week 10's action. We talked about some of the early slated games. We're not done with that yet. We still have a couple more great matchups to get into, starting with the Cleveland Browns and the New York Jets. Two teams that I think are at the forefront of a lot of conversations right now, being that the Jets made multiple deals on trade deadline day, trading away Sauce Gardner and Quinnen Williams. Meanwhile, the Browns are looking to find anything coming off of their Week 9 bye. So John Butchko of Locked On Jets and Spencer German of Locked On Browns take it through the game.
It's Crossover Thursday here on the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm John Butchko, the host of Locked On Jets, alongside Spencer German, the host of Locked On Browns, getting you ready for the Cleveland Browns coming to MetLife Stadium to take on the New York Jets. Spencer, give me a key to victory if the Browns are going to win this game.
I'm going to give you the same key that I tend to go with each week, which is the offense needs to find a way to run the football in this game. Dylan Gabriel struggled. I think through his first 4 starts, they're sticking with him here. They changed offensive coordinators this week. We didn't even get a chance to talk about that in our biggest storylines because we were so enamored with what happened at the trade deadline, obviously. But yeah, like changing offensive coordinators, not offensive coordinators, but handing the play calling, I should say. Kevin Stefanski handed the play calling off to Tommy Rees. Like, what is the offense going to look like? A lot of his offenses in college, where he obviously made a name for himself, were very run-heavy, run-based. And so I think there's going to be certainly an emphasis on that. But I think, frankly, like the Browns know they have to emphasize that because the one strength that offense has is Quinshon Judkins, is that run game if they can sort of get it going. And so I think if they can get Quinshon running successfully and get that part of the offense working, it sets everything else up. It sets the table for Dylan Gabriel to make some plays. It gets him comfortable. It allows everything else to sort of branch off of that offensively. And so, like, as much as I feel like the Browns probably are going to win this game because of the Jets situation this week, I also go into these games hesitant because you just don't know what you're going to get from this Browns offense on any given Sunday, any given week. It's usually pretty ugly. But if they can find some success running the football, then I think that certainly bodes well for them offensively to have one of their better days this season, which isn't hard because the bar's been very low for that side of the ball so far for them. I'll kick it back to you. What's the first key that you're sort of looking at from the Jets standpoint of things?
The coaching staff has to get this team collected emotionally. I would imagine it was a very difficult week. If we can remove, like, there is a long-term component to this. Of course, we may look back on this years from now and think that this was the right move for the Jets long-term, trading Quinnen Williams and Sauce Gardner. But for the guys in the locker room this week, I'm sure it was very jarring. I'm sure it's very difficult when you lose your 2 best players on defense. I think that's one of the big jobs for the coaching staff is just to get everybody focused again, because this is a pretty big distraction. You know, the Jets just sent a lot of talents to other teams in the NFL. So for me, that's number one, is before you do anything else, just make sure everyone's focused on the game and get them away from the distractions, which I think is going to be much easier said than done. So what's your number 2 key, Spencer?
Well, that's a really, really good, I think some really good insight there, just because you think about the emotional drain that comes with that from a locker room standpoint, and the messages that sends. And what I'll say is kind of off of that, as you were talking about this, I kind of changed my thought process on what I was going to say as my second thing here. I actually think, going that Dolphins game 2 weeks ago that the Browns played, part of the reason that game went so heavily in their favor was like they threw the first punch and they just kept going, right? Like they sort of set the tone early on in that game. And I think the Browns had to do something similar here in this game because of what you just alluded to, John. The idea that the Jets are very emotional right now. They saw what the message was at the trade deadline, trading away 2 super talented players on the defensive side of the football. It feels like they're tanking. It looks like they're tanking. They have to try to convince everybody in that locker room that that's not the case. And listen, I think this is the type of game, though, where like if you let the Jets hang around, if you let the Jets keep it close and interesting, especially coming off their first win of the season, emotions that came with that off of the bye week, and you had 2 weeks to kind of prepare for this Browns team here, I think that sort of there's also like an emotional high that kind of comes with these changes at times too, that then sort of fuels like an upset performance at times. Like I can't always explain. Well, actually, I think it is kind of explainable. Like when teams change head coaches, oftentimes like the team goes on like a little run, right? Like they might win a game or two after that because there's some emotion with it. I understand this is a different situation and it's losing 2 key players in your locker room, but sometimes these emotional swings can have the opposite impact for a team, where they kind of rally around each other and say like, all right, fine, they're trying to tank, like let's go out and prove them wrong and try to go win this game. So I think there is something that you have to guard against if you're the Browns in that regard. And so coming out and sort of throwing that first punch, throwing that first haymaker, setting the tone in this game so that you don't set yourself up for an upset, I think is also going to be sort of pivotal in this one, which plays into the offense, I think, getting off to that hot start, like I mentioned, run the football.
I think that's an excellent point. And I think you're absolutely right about that. I think how this game starts will be very important, because I think, if there can be kind of like an us against the world mentality if you hang in the game, and it's the type of thing that can kind of get a team going. My number 2 key for the Jets is they have to be opportunistic on defense. This is a defense that has struggled to force turnovers this season. It's one of the worst defenses in the NFL. That was true even when you had Quinnen Williams and Sauce Gardner, both of whom I think were playing at a relatively high level. There's just not many good players left on this defense after these trades. I know the Browns have had struggles on offense, but I would not trust this defense to stop any offense in the NFL at this point. I mean, they got absolutely torched by Cincinnati. Joe Flacco had a good game. The Bengals had a huge game on the ground 2 weeks ago. I mean, the Jets won the game, but they gave up 38 points on defense. They have to, when there's an opportunity for a turnover, they have to get it. I know, Dylan Gabriel's interception rate isn't that high, but sometimes when you're dealing with a rookie quarterback, they make mistakes. They put the ball in danger, and when that happens, you've got to make it happen. And Jets have had some really ridiculous fumble luck this year. So you have to, some of it's beyond your control, where, it's not just the Jets have had a low rate of recovery. If you're watching like some of these fumbles, it's like the ball bounces to like an area where 3 of the opponents are and no Jets are. So I think the defense just has to be opportunistic if the Jets want to steal this win.
Yeah, it's really well said. I think that sort of applies. It's kind of one of the old cliches week to week in terms of like keys to the game, right? Is like control the turnover battle, win that thing, don't turn the ball over in your own right, and be opportunistic. The Browns have struggled with that over the last couple of years, but I think this year you've seen them start to get some of those, and it has been one of the biggest swings in some of their better play this season, especially that Dolphins game. When they're getting turnovers, they tend to win the games. It sets their offense up for success a little bit easier, makes things easier on that side of the football, which has been a struggle for them. So, yeah, I think that applies to both. The last thing I'll say is the Browns cannot let Justin Fields take this game over as with his dual threat ability. Because I continue to say, especially, watching him closely at Ohio State, like when he's a runner, when he's able to, he makes some pretty spectacular plays with his legs. If he can just slice and dice with his ability to run the football and make some things happen and create and extend plays, I think that's where the Browns could get into some trouble. I think they're going to be up for the task because, like I said, they're pretty used to seeing that from Lamar Jackson twice a year. But if it becomes one of those games where it's a track meet and Justin Fields is just running up and down the field, that obviously is going to be problematic for this defense and the Browns.
My third key for the Jets is very much along the same lines. I'm not sure there have been many quarterbacks who have been as up and down through a season as Justin Fields has been so far for the Jets. He's started 6 games for the Jets. He has had a QBR. So some people don't love the ESPN stat QBR. I follow it to an extent. In 3 of his games, he's had a QBR of 67 or higher. In 3 of his games, he's had a QBR of 12 or lower. And I actually looked at these numbers. In the 3 games where he's played at a high level, he's been sacked or hit on about 15% of his dropbacks. On the 3 games where he's played at a low level, he's been sacked or hit around 75% of his dropbacks, which is an insane number. And it's not necessarily purely a reflection of his offensive line. In those games, if you watch them, there have been games where he's been very, very hesitant to throw, where, there was a game against Denver where he took 9 sacks. It took about the sacks averaged about 5 seconds after the snap. So it was just, a lot of them were just Field not throwing the football when he had opportunities. But there's only so much you can do with that. One thing I could say is that the Jets need to do everything in their power to keep Fields from being pressured. And that means leaving extra guys in. It means leaving extra guys in. If it means, you only send 3 guys out on patterns to make sure Myles Garrett doesn't get to him, and Myles Garrett's so good he might anyway, you do it. You just do everything in your power to prevent pressure from getting to Justin Fields, because when the Jets have been able to avoid Fields getting pressure and get some of it, he's contributed it to him to an extent, but that's just something that they have to do. If Justin Fields doesn't feel pressure, he can produce. If he's under any sort of pressure, it's been ugly this season.
Yeah, I think that sort of sums up Justin Fields' career to a T as well. It's been very up and down. But yeah, his ability to extend plays, his ability to do something with his legs, and the fact that every now and then, he has one of those games where he can stand in the pocket and throw the ball downfield. It's why there's still so many questions about him, right? Why teams keep giving him a shot, because they think they see the talent in there, but it just has never sort of been done consistently enough. But yeah, I think, and I'm also assuming that he's going to start here, because I know Aaron Glenn was still sort of keeping that close to the vest, but I'm assuming after a win in the bye, they're not going to make that change just yet. But yeah, I think Justin Fields could absolutely be a key in this game and flip it in the Jets' favor if he sort of takes over in that way. So I think the Browns have to be ready for that.
Be sure you check out John over at Locked On Jets and Spencer over at Locked On Browns, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Next up, a nice little NFC South battle. The Carolina Panthers, they're surprising some people this season with their play. And meanwhile, the Saints, well, they're just trying to figure out who their quarterback is. So Ross Jackson of Locked On Saints, as well as Julian Council of Locked On Panthers, talk about which NFC South team's going to come out with a win.
Here on this Locked On NFL crossover Thursday edition of Locked On Panthers and Locked On Saints. Again, guys, go over to PrizePicks, download the app today, and use code Locked On NFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. We already talked about the biggest storylines, some of the matchups that can change the game. What do each of these teams need to do to win on Sunday? What is one thing, Ross, that the Saints must do to win this game?
I mean, goodness gracious. I think really this comes down to the team figuring out its identity. Right now, they don't have one, and that's not super surprising. We knew that this was going to be an identity-defining season for this team here throughout 2025, and so maybe finding something that they feel like they can hang their hat on. Right? I made reference to that phrase earlier. A lot of it is that this team doesn't have anything that it falls back on that is something that it can always rely on. Right? And so whether that becomes Tyler Shuck, whether that becomes the run game, which the Saints haven't scratched 100 rushing yards as a team for 5 consecutive weeks now in the NFL. And then they traded away Trevor Penning to the Los Angeles Chargers for next year's 2027 6th round pick. That kind of showed you maybe that's where they felt like their weak link was. And so getting Dylan Radins back in the lineup, where they were way more successful with him in the lineup in the early portion of the season, rushing for over 100 yards in 2 consecutive games to start the year out of the 3 that he started. Maybe there's something to the way that he plays the position that works more in mesh with the rest of this offensive line, but the offensive line's also hurt, yada, yada. So they got to figure out something that is going to be their fallback, their go-to, what it is that they do. So I think they've got to figure that out. And I think that the other piece is just winning on first down. This team consistently is playing behind the sticks on or behind the 8 ball on third downs, and it's 3rd and 7, 3rd and 8, 3rd and 9, whatever. Those are bad situations to be in when you have a rookie quarterback and a defense that's going to be looking to pin their ears back because it's a throwing situation and it's a clear and obvious throwing situation, all those things. So finding an identity, winning on third downs, extending drives that actually turn into points, I think those are going to be the big things for New Orleans that they would have to do to get into the conversation about winning this game on Sunday.
Ross, I only wanted one thing. You gave me 3. That's fine. I'm going to give you 3
I know.
as well.
I'm sorry. There's a lot that this team's got to do, man.
Well, here's 3 things that Carolina needs to do. Number 1, it's not really like a statistical thing. It's just a very plainly handle your business. You look at the games that they played against like opponents, which is the Jets and the Dolphins. Those were games where they kind of struggled. They had to come back from 17 points down against Miami before winning that game. They did not look interested in scoring points at all offensively against the Jets. But J.C. Horn's like, we're not going to lose here, guys. Let's go ahead and take care of this dub and get back home and play Buffalo. So this is one of those things where can you handle your business? Can you avoid another 1-score game? Can you just show that even if you beat New Orleans, it's not going to prove to anybody that, the thing last week against Green Bay, that win wasn't a fluke, but at least it show that you're a serious team, that you're not going to play it for food, which, to quote Julian Edelman, you don't want to do that this week. You need to finally find a way to win comfortably, and this is the type of game and the type of opponent that you should do that. You got to give Rico the ball, and hopefully the quad is not going to be a lingering issue for him, because if he's not available moving forward down the stretch, then this is not a team that's going to be winning very many games because what am I going to say? They're not going to win that much more game. They're not going to win that much let down the stretch. I can't talk. You know what I'm trying to say, guys? If Rico's not healthy and Bryce is not throwing the ball for over 200 yards, which has been the case even through the winning streak because the run games won all these games, they're probably not going to win that many more games. There we go. That's what I was trying to say.
Nailed it. Got there.
Finally made it. Brought it on home. But yeah, Rico Dowdle. Just keep giving that guy the football because good things happen when you do that, especially when you give it to him a lot. 3-0 if you want to do running back wins.
There you go. Running back wins? Is that what we're doing now?
Running back wins since he's been a starter in Carolina. And the last thing, win a turnover battle. You're 3-0, Carolina, since you've done that this season in the games that you've done. That
defensive wins.
Yeah, defensive wins. So win a turnover battle. The Panthers and Saints have not taken care of the football this season. 13 turnovers to Carolina, 14 for New Orleans. They rank 28th and 29th respectively, and they have everything, man. All these stats, turnover EPA per game. That's a stat, folks. Go to True Media and find that out. But yeah, 28, 29th respectively. Carolina 28th, New Orleans 29th, and turnover EPA per game. Win the turnover battle, you likely win the game like you have throughout the season so far. So those are the 3 things among many others the Panthers need to do to win on Sunday, but really handle your business. The Panthers, who have been underdogs all year long, are favorites on Sunday.
Yep.
Now, they have opened up as underdogs, and I know the Jets line shifted to them being a favorite slight.
Sure.
They are favorites in this game against the Saints on Sunday. Do you have a prediction for me, Ross, and how you think this game is going to play out?
I do. Yeah, I think this game is going to play out in favor of the Carolina Panthers. Right now, our friends over at FanDuel have it as a 5.5-point spread. I'm taking them in the points on this one. I'm going Panthers 23, Saints 17. That's an improvement for the Saints, who had 1 touchdown last week. Now maybe finding a way to get 2 touchdowns in this one. I think you're looking for the incremental progress at the quarterback position as the number one thing for this team, as opposed to the points scored by the time that it's all said and done. But I think the Saints will be coming back here to New Orleans 1-9 after dropping their 4th game in 5 years to the Carolina Panthers.
Yeah, there's really no excuse for Carolina not to win this game on Sunday.
Yeah.
I mean, just none at all. You need to win. This is an opportunity, along with the next time they play down there in New Orleans, to pick up 2 what should be standard professional-like wins against a team that is a rebuild of their own and far behind where you're at this point in time. So looking at the 2 games against New Orleans, that should get Carolina up to 7 wins at minimum this season. And then can you take care of business against Atlanta next week? And then against the better teams that you'll face, they're going to be right there on the playoff bubble, much like yourselves. Those are games that we'll see how they go. But I expect Carolina to win this game. I'm not saying they're going to win, but I expect them to win this game.
Yeah, right.
And if they don't,
They beat themselves.
Tune in to
probably.
Locked On Panthers.
Yeah, right. Come through and I'll tell you why.
Yeah, tune in to Locked On Panthers on Sunday around 5:30 from inside Bank of America Stadium. I'll let you know how I feel about it. That happens. But I do not think that will be the case. But you can never roll it out in this league.
Be sure to find Ross over at Locked On Saints and Julian over at Locked On Panthers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. The Jaguars and the Texans face off in another divisional matchup, this time the AFC South. The Texans and the Jaguars. Jaguars coming off a big win in week number 9. Meanwhile, the Texans kicked only field goals, and that was not enough against the Denver Broncos. So John Hickman of Locked On Texans and Tony Wiggins of Locked On Jaguars take you through keys to victory and so much more.
Closing out today's episode, it's all about the game predictions. Sunday is a must. Every game for Houston is a must win moving forward for the Texans. But I also think it's fair to say every game for the Jags is a must win to keep their playoff hopes alive. A lot of Texan fans discredit what the Jags have done this year. I'm not going to be that guy simply because what I thought the Jags were going to be and where they are now, I got to give credit where credit is due. Liam Cohen is doing everything he can to put that offense together. Some of the moves that's been made to create a good roster by that first-time general manager, I think is respectable in his first year. Wig, I'm sorry, man. Y'all a good team. Y'all a good ball club, man. And on Sunday, I think when I look at what Houston struggles with, they struggle with better teams. They have not beat a team that wasn't injury-riddled in San Fran, injury-riddled Baltimore, no Lamar Jackson. That defense was banged up, right? And then Tennessee is just Tennessee.
Right.
We get that. And we will talk to the madman, Tyler Rowland, when we get a chance to talk to him again. But overall, the Jags are a better team. I don't see the Houston Texans winning this game on Sunday, especially without their franchise quarterback, C.J. Stroud. I think this is a game that can probably get away from them early, and they won't have a chance in it, 24-13. Davis Mills just maybe with a week of practice as a starter, he plays better. But overall, they're asking a lot of the offense without Stroud, and they're going to continue to ask a lot of the defense. And time again, the offense just lets them down.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a little closer. I wouldn't be surprised if it came down to the last couple of possessions. But it'll probably be a game that the Jaguars kind of dominate, like a lot of their games. And you go, why is it so close? It feels like they're up 34-10, and it's like 23-16. What's going on? Because that's just who they are, and that's how it is. And this is the NFL, bro. I've seen the Packers lose games that I didn't think they were supposed to. They lost to Carolina and they lost to Cleveland. Think about it. A win is a win in the NFL. So I'm to the point now where I don't care about margin of victory. I'm on the bandwagon of just a win is a win, and then turn it into the coach speak guy that says, look, a win is a win. We got the victory. Got a lot of stuff to clean up. You know, I love that one. Got a lot of stuff to clean up, but
we're heading in the right direction.
We're heading in the right direction. You know what I'm saying? But we got to clean some stuff up. Yeah, that's all right. We be 6-3 and be dirty. I'd rather be 6-3 and be dirty than be 3-6 and clean. So my thing is, we can look dirty and the game can be tight and the game can be close. And I think it's going to be because outside of 26-10 win early in the year against Carolina, that was a weird game because it was like a stoppage because of weather for like an hour or so. All of the Jaguars games have been close, with the exception of the blowout loss that they had to the Rams in London. All of them have been very, very close. I don't think this is going to be any different. I think it'll be close as well. But at the end of the day, I do believe the Jaguars are going to win because this is a team that is learning how to beat opponents that you're supposed to win. And as much as we joke about needing to clean things up, the difference is the object is to win and to move on, survive and advance, move on. Last week was more of a must win because at the start of Sunday, you didn't want to be a team like Jacksonville to lose to a team that you should beat. I'd rather win against a team that you should beat and it be ugly than to lose to a team that you should beat. And then we didn't know if the Colts were going to beat the Steelers or not and be 8-1 and be 3 games out. Because that didn't happen and because Houston lost, this isn't so much of a must win as it is, you know what? it'd be nice to go ahead and win this one to sweep Houston. And now you probably, like you say, the Titans are the Titans. They have 4 division games left. They haven't played Tennessee and they haven't played the Colts. It's possible that they could go 6-0. And I think in the beginning of the season when we did our prediction show, I said they'd go 5-1 in the division and they win it. So the thing is we have to look at what's in front of them. And what's in front of them is they're a team that hopefully not only have they won these games, but they've kind of learned how to win these close games. And, you know, they say fake it till you make it. Well, winning games ain't faking it. That's actually winning games. So that is the key. And I think the Jaguars are going to do it this week. I anticipate a close game, but I also think that one of the things that I thought was an advantage that was a detriment, but showed back up last week is Cam Little. Cam Little can kick that thing from Katy, bro.
70 yards.
Yeah, and he made a 70-yarder in the preseason. He broke the record with a 68-yarder. That would have been good for 78, by the way. That advantage that they have now when they get across midfield or close to it, that they can run him out there and get points. I think the fact that he's broken that slump is tremendous. And that's going to be the key for them moving down the stretch, because now that turns back into something that the defense has to watch, and they can't back off and just assume we're going to give them this underneath stuff. No, you can't give them the underneath stuff, because they get to midfield, that kick and kick it. So the Jaguars are slowly getting healthy, and no Travis Hunter also that hurts a little bit because he had really come on offensively. So
what is he for y'all?
No, I think it's been a little bit overblown because of the expectations.
No, my question, what is he for y'all? I look at Travis Hunter and I think he can be an elite cornerback. But right before the injury, I mean, and he did it in college, he was turning up as a playmaker on offense. What would you like to see his career be in Jacksonville?
Well, the hardest part is over. That transition period, that feeling out, trying to figure it out, that part is over. I believe that he learned the hardest position, which is their F position, which is the slot. He was learning the most difficult thing, and that's what you do with superlative players. You put the most on their plate. And this is what everybody wanted, right? So people say, just put him on the field. No, we're going to put it on him. Travis is a 10-year player for the Jacksonville. For the Jaguars, when you give up 2 first-round picks, that ain't just about instant impact. That's about doing the right thing, even if it doesn't look right to a whole bunch of people. And nobody knew what the right thing was, and they admitted they didn't know what it was going to look like, how it was going to play out. They've taken a lot of criticism, but everybody who's criticized them doesn't understand that if they were in the same position, it would probably look the same way. He is a good cornerback. I think he could roll out of bed and be an all-pro corner. Wide receiver takes time to learn all of the nuances. You know what I'm saying? It's a big jump to go from high school to Jackson State to Colorado to the NFL. And no disrespect to Colorado, it ain't like he was playing in the SEC where he had to go play for Nick Saban and go through all of this. It's just not the same thing. So that's a huge, huge jump for a kid that some people think that they just put him out there and just took advantage of his ability. Well, when you get to the NFL, and the example I use is Houston, if everybody was healthy. It ain't that easy to guard Nico Collins for a whole drive and then come out there and think you're going to run past Derek Stingley. Those dudes ain't going to let you do that. So now there's the adjustment part of it. It's about being in different meeting rooms. If you watch the games, you would see sometimes he didn't know where to line up on offense and he had to be told. So I think that hard part is over. And now when he does come back later on in the season and for the future, you're going to see the absolute best out of him. And there's no game where he goes on the field and he's not at least one of the 3 most talented players on the field outside of quarterbacks. There's no game I've seen where when you look at run, jump, athlete, twitch, and want to and desire, I haven't seen a game where there was more than 2 other guys out there on that field that were just like him. So now I think they figured out how they're going to move. It's too bad he got injured, but when he comes back, there'll be a better plan on how to execute with him, because they're going to learn how to execute without him. He's going to get a chance to watch it. And they're going to be a dangerous team, man, if they can manage to get on a little bit of a winning streak here without him, and then you bring him in and add him back to it. That makes the Jaguars a very, very dangerous team down the stretch.
Y'all heard it first. Stamped. I can't wait to see the return of and fullness and healthiness of Travis Hunter. I think he's an amazing kid. I think he's an amazing athlete. And I hate to say this. Well, I don't hate to say this, but him being for his hometown, playing for his hometown, and what he could potentially be, I think it's just great for football, great for the brand.
Yeah, he ain't from Jacksonville. He's from Florida, but
I mean, like from Florida.
Yeah, I got you. Yeah, he's from down in the, I think from the near the Broward County area, but still, he's still one of us. He's still a Florida boy. You know, Duval, man. Florida boys do it different.
Find John over at Locked On Texans. Find Tony over at Locked On Jaguars, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. Rounding out the 1 p.m. slate of games, it's the New York Giants and the Chicago Bears. The Bears coming off a thriller against the Bengals in week number 9. Unbelievable game. Meanwhile, the Giants, they're reeling right now, most definitely. So Patricia Traina of Locked On Giants and Joe George, the lead host of the Locked On Bears Squad Show, talk about keys to victory and so much more.
All right, everybody, welcome back to Crossover Thursday, Locked On Giants, Locked On Bears. I'm Patricia Traina, Locked On Giants. He is Joe George. He is the lead host of the Bears Squad Show. And speaking of the squad shows, do check out our respective squad shows. The Giants Squad Show airs on Thursday, 1 o'clock, 1 hour live. And Joe, tell everybody when the Bears Squad Show airs.
Yeah, we do the obviously the post-game shows, and then 6:15 on Tuesday nights.
All right. And Giants also have a post-game squad show, by the way. All right. In this segment, we're going to take a look at the keys to victory. And Joe, the Giants are going in, according to our friends over at FanDuel, as a 3.5-point underdog. What else is new? The Giants are going to be underdogs until further notice. But what do you see as the Bears' biggest keys to a victory?
I'll tell you, though, it's a lower number than I thought it was going to be.
Me too.
What does Vegas know? Like, what do they know that I don't know? Because I saw that number and I was like, uh-oh, I don't like that. I think the key to victory for the Bears is to see Caleb Williams have not a performance like last week with 20 receiving yards and 50 rushing yards and 250 passing yards, but another game for 250 passing yards and 2 touchdowns for Caleb Williams this week. And not just for this part, for this game, but as the Bears do have some playoff hopes right now, is continuing that offensive development for him. And we want to see that the back-to-back games of putting together great quarterback play. So that's my first key to victory. And I'd say my second one is those turnovers. You got to get 2 of them in this game, because I don't trust this defense to consistently stop the Giants. So you got to get at least 2 turnovers in this game.
Now, I feel like I'm going to beat a dead horse here, because I say this every single week. Stop the run. This Giants defense, they've got the guys to do it, but the run fits have been bad. The angles have been poor. I mean, you look at the mistakes on film made by the Giants defense, and I would say more than half of them come from the run defense. It's just been really bad. But here's a key that I'm going to give you that I don't think a lot of people are really looking at. And it's kind of outside of the box. And this is on the Giants offensive side of the ball. And that is, the Giants got to go back to 12 personnel. Now, what was interesting is last week against the 49ers, they did not run 12 personnel as much as they had the previous few weeks. 12 personnel has kind of been their answer to dealing with having lost Malik Neighbors. The reason why I don't think they went and used 12 personnel last week was because they did not have tight end Daniel Bellinger in the lineup. He was injured with a neck ailment. Hopefully he is back this week, because look, the Giants did not get Jackson Dart, a playmaker, by the trade deadline. So go back to what worked for him. And 11 personnel last week really wasn't working as well for him as 12 personnel had been working. So I think if the Giants could go back to that, who knows, maybe they can string together some, time-consuming drives, keep the Bears offense off the field, and rack up some points, because look, the Giants can score. Their offense is, believe it or not, even though the results aren't there, the offense is better than it was last year, even with the injuries. But they've got to play into their strengths. And last week, I think they got away from that a little bit.
Yeah, I think it is one where you see the injuries and you don't think that like I think Bears fans are like, the Giants offense isn't that good. When you look at it, they are good. The other one I'll throw in there too is that the one thing that can help the Giants that hurt the Bears last week and has hurt the Bears a lot this season. As much as I talked about their secondary so far today, I think the weakest unit on this team collectively on both sides is the special teams unit. They've really struggled this year in various different ways. I mean, Devin Duvernay does not look like the guy that played for the Baltimore Ravens. They don't get great, return yardage from him. Cairo Santos, I think everyone wants him gone, but that's kind of also how we all feel about our kickers. But he has this low line drive kick and had one blocked last week. Also missed a field goal that got called back on a penalty. So, it doesn't show that on the box score, but he's been missing kicks on even inside the 50-yard line. He doesn't have a big leg either. He can't kick more than a 50-yard field goal pretty much, which is shocking in today's NFL. And last week too, the Bengals had a kickoff return touchdown, the first play of the game. And then after the Bears went down and scored, the Bengals then got a kickoff return to the 45-yard line and only had to go another 55 yards for a touchdown and did it easily. So the special teams is a huge weakness, and it doesn't really matter who you're facing at this point because the Bears they can't stop kickoff return. It's really strange that they can't figure it out, and they're giving these offenses that even when they're struggling, these 40, 50-yard field positions, and it just making it so easy for them. So that's the last one I throw in because it's also driving me insane.
And that's interesting because up until maybe a couple weeks ago, the Giants' special teams were a strength, underrated strength. Now, the last couple of weeks, I think because of injuries and because they've had to lessen the load of some of their core guys who are needed on offense or defense, the special teams have kind of tapered off a little bit. But hopefully, like I said, if the Giants get back some of these other guys healthy, they can move the core special teamers back and give them the bigger role. I mean, Abdul Carter is a perfect example. He was a guy that they took off special teams for a little while. They put him back on there. Dane Belton, who's been a core special teamer, he's had to start at safety, with Javon Holland out. So, special teams is so tricky. And then, of course, it would help if the Giants got consistent kicking from both their punter, Jamie Gillen, who just every week it just seems like up and down with him. And then, Graham Gano, they brought him back off of IR, but he missed the field goal. He has one job. He doesn't even kick off anymore. You can't have him missing field goals because that's points that you end up losing. So special teams, I'm glad you brought that up because that is an underrated but key battle.
Yeah, absolutely. And no one hates that's the worst part about watching football, I think, is watching a kicker miss a field goal because, man, it's your only job. You just got to get it through the uprights. And I think last week we were doing our post-game show and we were venting about Cairo Santos. And as I look at my phone, I saw that the Jacksonville Jaguars kicker had hit a 68-yard field goal and set the NFL record. And I was like, the Bears don't have a guy who can't hit a 45-yarder. Jags got guys hitting from 68. What is it? So yeah, it's been a disappointing year especially because it's the one coach that Ben Johnson retained from the previous regime from Matt Eberflus. He kept their special teams coach and Richard Hightower. So having it be that much of a struggle that's been this year has been a huge disappointment for Bears fans.
All right, Joe, before we wrap up this additional crossover Thursday, again, the Giants are 3.5-point underdog as of this recording, according to FanDuel. What's your prediction for Sunday's game?
I think the Bears cover. I don't think it's going to be a big one, though. I think the Giants will do enough to keep this a good game. And Jackson Dart, I think he's a special player and will be. I was a big fan of his coming out of college. So I think the Bears win this game 27-20.
All right. I can't pick the Giants until I see better play. I just can't. I mean, fool me once, fool me twice. I was picking them earlier in the year. I can't do it. I'm sorry, Giant fans. It's just not going to happen until I have reason to, till I see reason to think that the Giants are going to be better. I dare say, and I hope I'm wrong here, the Giants are going to lose by 2 scores. There's been that trend on the road this year. As I mentioned at the top of the show, I don't see that trend ending, especially, as the injuries pile up and the uncertainties continue. I mean, these guys, after a while, you could just kind of see the life is being sucked out of them. I hope they find it within them to make it a competitive game. I think some of them will. I don't know if all of them will, but I just can't go with the Giants. I'm sorry, Giant fans, but we'll see how it works out. It should be a good one as always. Like I said, 2 of the oldest NFL franchises squaring off. The Bears have something to fight for. The Giants, well, they're jockeying for a high draft pick.
You can find Patricia over at Locked On Giants. You can find Joe and the rest of the Locked On Bears crew over at Locked On Bears, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. That'll do it for the 1 p.m. slate of games, but it won't do it for us here on the Ultimate NFL Pregame Show. Coming up, we have a lot of 4 o'clock window matchups to dive into. Stay tuned. Plenty coming away on the Ultimate NFL Pregame Show. First, the show is brought to you by Gametime. NFL season is back, and honestly, there's nothing better than being in the stadium surrounded by fans cheering on your team. But let's be honest, getting tickets can be a hassle between queues, login screens, and prices jumping at checkout. It's frustrating. That's why I use Gametime, the app that gives the advantage back to fans. Now, Gametime is fast, it's easy, and it's backed by the Gametime guarantee. So you'll always get 100% authentic tickets delivered on time and at the best price. Plus, all the fees are included, so the price you see is the price you pay. And so I pulled up Gametime. In just a couple taps, I saw amazing deals. I'm talking about your favorite NFL games as low as $100. And the app has made it super simple. I could even see the exact view from my seat before I bought. And I love zone deals too, because you pick the section, then Gametime picks the seats, and you save big. Honestly, it's faster, it's cheaper, and less stressful than any other way I've bought tickets. So download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's promo code LOCKEDON NFL for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download Gametime today. Continuing on the Ultimate NFL pregame show, Kevin Oestreicher still talking with you here. Just finished up the 1 p.m. slate of games for week number 10 as the NFL season flies by. But now let's dive into the 4 o'clock window, starting off with an NFC West battle. The Los Angeles Rams, they're proving to be one of the best teams in the NFC. Meanwhile, the San Francisco 49ers, they're looking to keep pace in the NFC West. So Travis Rogers of Locked On Rams and Brian Peacock of Locked On 49ers talk about which NFC West team will come out on top.
All right, here we go. Travis Rogers of Locked On Rams with Brian Peacock of Locked On 49ers, breaking this one down for you. And I want to paint a little picture here of Rams 49ers. So I talked about some of the things that happened in the last game. Niners are going to need the ball to bounce their way. Can you get an interception? Matthew Stafford can get a wild hair sometimes. Throw the ball to the other team. I know he's been very good lately. Can you get your big mitts on a ball at the line of scrimmage and pop it up in the air and catch it? You're going to need some help. Maybe can you win on special teams? I think the 49ers are going to need a combination of some of those things, and there's a reason the Rams are favored in this game, and they should be with how banged up the 49ers are. But the Niners, as banged up as they are, still have 6 wins, and there's a reason. They're still playing some good football. They're well coached on both sides of the ball. I think one of the aspects, and you could talk to me about if this has changed, if this has gotten a lot better since that 49ers-Rams game the first time, is the Rams secondary. Now, the Rams are good up front, but they were able to be had on the back end. Is that still the case with this team? Because I think that's one of the things the 49ers are going to have to do. Kyle's going to try to run the ball, but can you be in third and manageable when you still have your entire playbook at your disposal, then find those matchups in the back end, whether it's Kendrick Bourne or anybody else?
They've gotten a little bit better, Brian. They did, like you mentioned, the Rams were pretty quiet at the deadline. They did make a trade before the deadline, about a week before. Roger McCreary from the Tennessee Titans comes over. We didn't get to see him against the Saints last week, so I'm curious to see what it looks like. It feels like he's more of what they already had. It gives them a little bit of depth. I don't think it's exactly what I or Rams fans are looking for as far as kind of a shutdown corner. Sauce Gardner, of course, goes to the Colts with a couple of first round picks, pretty high price. So the Rams obviously, and what was interesting to me is the Rams, with Les Snead and Sean McVay, when they kind of feel like they have a shot at it, they go for it. They're not gun shy. Like when they think there's an opportunity to be had, they'll try to do it. Whether that was with Jalen Ramsey, whether that was with the Matthew Stafford trade, whether that was acquiring Von Miller or Odell Beckham Jr. or whatever it is. Like when they're not one of those teams that it's too high, we're out. Like they'll go for it when they think they have a chance. And I think the fact that they didn't do that, and in particular, to your point, didn't do something like that in the secondary, leads me to believe they think they have what they need because they're good enough. And I would love to get your opinion on this too. I look around the NFC. I think there are maybe 6 teams that you could make a reasonable argument for are the best team in the NFC. And I don't think any of them are the wrong answer, but I think the Rams feel like they have enough back there. Quentin Lake's playing at a really high level. He's gotten a couple of forced fumbles the last couple of weeks. He got his first interception not that long ago. So he's starting to play a little better. Darius Williams has been better after being not very good early in the season. And I'm curious to see what McCurry can bring to the table. But, you look around the NFC, it feels like everybody's got something that's not great. And the Rams are certainly in that same boat. But is that kind of how you see it?
Oh, absolutely. And even teams like the Packers and the Lions that I thought might have been, maybe a little level above where any of these teams in the West, although I thought the Seahawks and the Rams and the Niners would be competitive and good this year. And I actually had high hopes for the Cardinals as well. And they've looked, kind of up and down. Maybe Brissett's the answer for them. I don't know. They have the West is the only division in football that has all 4 teams with a plus point differential, by the way. And so even the Cardinals do. But the Lions have 3 losses, and there's been games where they look beatable. And then they started the season slow too. It's like, oh man, they had too many losses and lose all your coordinators. And then it looked like, oh man, now they're the best team in football. And it's like, I'm not so sure. It's hard to tell. The Philadelphia Eagles kind of feel the same way. The Packers don't know how to put the pedal down. I feel like they have no killer instinct. The Green Bay Packers, is on paper, they should be one of the best teams in the conference. I really like the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Niners have already seen them. I think they're coming up maybe next for the Rams, right? The Rams,
two more. The Rams enter the part of their schedule, which is why I think this game against the Niners coming up here is such a big deal. This is only the second division game that they'll have played. They're already 0-1, losing to the Niners earlier, but this kicks off at San Francisco, home against the Seahawks, home against the Bucks on Sunday Night Football in a few weeks, and then what felt like one of those layup games when the schedule came out, they have to go to Carolina the week after that, who's a 5-4 football team. They've got a little life there. So you've got 4 NFC teams that you're going to play in the next 4 weeks. All 4 of them have playoff aspirations, and this is what determines division. This is what determines, conference record, determines seeding, all of this stuff. And the Rams have just gotten fat on the AFC. They have 1 NFC win so far this season. That was last week against New Orleans.
The Panthers is the crazy one. They're just running the heck out of the ball on people right now. It's pretty amazing what they're doing. And with what Sam Darnold is doing with the Seahawks right now, you got Baker Mayfield, Sam Darnold. I think those are probably the 2 biggest competition for Matthew Stafford. You're talking about MVP right now.
Yeah, the Sam Darnold thing is wild to me because I've been wrong about Sam Darnold on both sides 100 times. Sam Darnold played high school football about 10 minutes from where I'm sitting right here. Okay, so I've been familiar with Sam Darnold at San Clemente High School, familiar with him at USC, and watching him at SC, I'm like, this guy's got it. Like, he's really, really good. Then he goes to the Jets and he stinks. And it's like, okay, maybe that's just the Jets. Maybe, nobody's been good with the Jets. Goes to Carolina and you're like, it doesn't look very good. You guys had him up in San Francisco, didn't really play very much. Then he explodes in Minnesota. And then the Rams just tear him to pieces twice. The Lions tear him to pieces. And it's like, that's the guy right there. And he goes to Seattle, and I'm like, that's not going to work. And he's killing it all over again. So I've thrown up my hands on Sam Darnold. I don't know if he's an MVP or he's just in the perfect situation. I can't figure it out.
I think getting some good coaching for sure helped him get his rebuild that confidence that he once had was super important. I think it is really important for quarterbacks. And it's funny because last week he was just dealing. He's like 15 for 15. And then all of a sudden throws that one weird little interception. He's still got that in him, But he's super talented. He's athletic and he can throw the heck out of the ball. And so I'm kind of rooting for him. Don't love seeing him do great for the Seahawks, but he seems like a good dude and definitely has figured some things out and he's having a phenomenal year too. So this is going to be fun in the NFC, man, because there's a lot of teams that are really close as we're in the halfway point right now.
Yeah, the Rams play the rest of their games are all NFC games. They're finished with their AFC slate. Obviously, just like the Niners, they played the AFC South this year. Their crossover game was against Baltimore, another AFC opponent there. So they really do need to win on Sunday against the Niners because 0-2 in your division, and you lose all your tiebreakers there. It's another NFC loss if it does go that way. So I think whatever they got cooking, they're gonna come out with it. It feels like they got kind of caught flat-footed with what they were getting ready for the last time because of all the injuries like we talked about. And I think they will be fully present. Whether or not McVay can crack the Shanahan code, I don't know. We'll see, but I don't think it's going to be because they weren't ready. And I think that's probably what happened the last time because the first half, they just got run over.
Yeah, might have been one of those weird trap games almost, even though a division rival shouldn't really be that way, but it felt that way coming in. I was picking against the Niners by a lot. And the line all of a sudden got really big in that game. And so we'll see. And, I expect these to be competitive games within the division, but you nailed it too, talking about, you got to start talking about tiebreakers here. And the 49ers are in a good spot with 6 wins, and they've won against all the teams in the NFC West. And so that's really important. And to get both against the Rams would be huge for this thing going down the stretch between in a 3-team race in the NFC West with the Seahawks, Rams, and 49ers right now. Just real quick before we go, what's it look like for a Rams win?
I think if they make their kicks, they win. If they play the way they've been playing, if Matthew Stafford, and like you said, sometimes he'll have a day where you're like, what's going on out there? But he feels like he's kind of elevated his game. So if he does what he does, and that defense, the way they can rush the passer is no joke. We haven't talked about Jared Verse or Byron Young. Byron Young's second in the league in sacks with 9. I believe they're third in the league total. Braden Fisk just got his first of the season. Puna Ford has kind of changed the way that they defend the run a little bit. They're much better there. So I don't really worry too much about the defense. I don't think they're going to give up much more than 24 on a bad day sort of situation, which, that usually puts you in most games. If they make their kicks, I think they win. And I just don't know if they're going to make their kicks. I don't think Sean McVay knows if they're going to make their kicks.
Young can really close on the quarterback, man. That guy is so athletic coming off the edge. And then you got Versus the opposite. He just wants to run through everyone's face on the way to the quarterback, too.
He does.
It's a good young group on that defensive line. We talked a lot about them in the last crossover.
Yeah.
It's definitely important to mention how good they're playing up front on that Rams defense.
Be sure to go support Brian over at Locked On 49ers and Travis over at Locked On Rams, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. The Detroit Lions and Washington Commanders face off against one another. Detroit, again, they're proving they're one of the teams to beat in the NFC as well. And the Commanders, while they're dealing with a lot of injuries, Jaden Daniels suffered an injury, Terry McLaurin still out, so they're trying to put the pieces together. Matt Derry of Locked On Lions and David Harrison of Locked On Commanders talk about which team will come out on top in this one.
Wrapping up this crossover Thursday episode of Locked On Commanders, Locked On Lions. I'm David Harrison. He's Matt Derry. And we're talking about what is going to happen, or what could happen, I should say, for each of these teams to get a win. The Detroit Lions looking for their 6th win, correct, Matt? And the Washington Commanders, of course, looking for their 4th win, trying to snap a losing streak. Really long flight to Spain coming up for me, Matt, if this team carries a 5-game losing streak into Madrid. But
You're going?
What are the keys? I am going.
I love it.
What are the keys for the Detroit Lions to make sure that I have to pack a 5th L in a row in my carry-on luggage?
Well, if you're traveling on Ross Jackson's dime, you'll be just fine. The proprietor of the Locked On NFL. No, I said it before. The Commanders' pass defense, 4th worst in the league. So let's get back to Lions. I'm not saying that this is the greatest show on turf or anything like that, but when the Lions are rolling, that passing game's clicking, the play action game, you got Montgomery and Gibbs on the ground kind of leading to that pass game. But we've kind of waited for Jameson Williams to break out. He had a really nice game the other day after offensive coordinator John Morton said, it's my fault, I'm not getting on the ball. Now this week, Dan Campbell says, we got to get Isaac Tesla more involved. So you got St. Brown, you got J-Mo, you got Raymond, you got Tesla. You got plenty of weapons on this offense. Laporta in the passing game as well. Make it happen. Commanders secondary's banged up, like you said. Lattimore and others out. Take advantage of it. Give Goff some time to throw. And I think if the Lions score some points and score early, and I'm not saying they're going to do what Darnold and Seattle did, but if they could do something similar and get it rolling, there will be some confidence on that sideline. And give the defense a little bit of time to breathe and kind of go after Mariota. So I think first and foremost, Lions passing game, getting Goff in good rhythm is going to be huge. And certainly it starts with center and left guard, which I don't know right now what that's going to look like.
Yeah. I watched the Lions game recently. It was I think it was 3 weeks ago. And I think Brian Branch was serving a suspension. Players were injured. And the question coming into the game was like, how is this secondary going to hold it together and keep this opposing passing game from going on? I don't even remember who the opponent was, to be honest with you. But I remember that coming out of that game, everybody was really impressed. Like, man, this secondary of a lot of guys who just don't nobody knows. Honestly, Nick Whiteside, former Commanders player, like really stepped up in that game. And I was looking at it, I was like, you know what, man? Like, you know what this is? This is a secondary full of guys who are just doing what they're asked to do. They're not doing anything extra. They're not trying to be Superman. They're just doing, what does this play call ask for me to do? That's what I need to do. And I just do it to the best of my ability. And I think that's the way, when you have an injured unit, a banged up unit, that's the way they step up and rise up together, is just 4 or 5 guys, however many it is, just doing what they need to do. That has not been the trend for the Washington Commanders defense. That has not been the trend for some of the Washington Commanders just in general. Matt, they need to do 3 things that they have not done in quite a while for me to win this game. And that's a pretty tall task to ask a team, any team, to do 3 things they never do. Run the ball smart. That's number 1. Not just run the ball. Look, you look at the stats, you say the Washington Commanders have the 4th best rushing attack in the NFL. What you don't see if you're not a Commanders fan or Commanders media is that stat, they were number 1 not a month ago. And then they were number 2. And then they were number 3. And now they're number 4. What does that tell you? This is a rushing attack that is going the opposite direction. And for me, it's because they're not being creative in the way they set up the run, and they're not being smart in how they use the run. So do that. Go back to that Minnesota Vikings tape. Take a little bit of what Aaron Jones and the Minnesota Vikings offense was able to do. See what you can steal from it, and see if you can exploit some of those same things. Run smart. Don't just run to run. Run smart, because Marcus Mariota cannot keep this team up in a shootout. Win the turnover battle. Detroit is +6 in the turnover differential this season. The Washington Commanders are -6. You literally couldn't get on any more opposite ends of this battle if you tried to. Marcus Mariota has 4 interceptions on 88 attempts this season. He's got to protect the football, and that defense has got to go get the football. However, they got to go get the football by just doing their job. So it's kind of a little bit of a contradictory emotion going on there, and then get red zone stops. Interestingly enough, Matt, just like the rushing game, at one point in time, the Washington Commanders had one of the best red zone defenses in the National Football League. Then came week 8, and they allowed a 100% red zone conversion rate. Then came week 9, and they allowed a 100% red zone conversion rate. Again, it's no longer bend, don't break. It's bend and then break. The Washington Commanders have got to find a way, even though they're more banged up now than they were entering week 8, find a way. Joey Jr. is moving from the box to the sideline. Find a way to motivate the troops. Find a way to get it done. You cannot let the Detroit Lions just score touchdowns every time they get inside the 20, or else this might be a very empty stadium by the time we reach the midway point of the 3rd quarter yet again.
That's crazy that they're -6, especially with where they were last year and how opportunistic that team was under Dan Quinn. One other thing real fast on the Lions, 10 penalties last week was unlike them at all. This has not been a Ben Johnson type Bears team or a classic Raiders 12 penalties type situation. Lions were very sloppy last week, and that's got to be cut in half. You know, if the regardless of whether the Lions are going to win, and I think they are, and everything else, you're on the road. It's 4:25. It's going to get dark early. Stop with the false starts and 2 men in motion. Just these were pre-snap stuff that's unlike what a Dan Campbell led team is doing. So clean some of that up, and I think they'll be in decent shape.
Yeah, man, Commanders are no. If we had a 4th key to victory that they are not doing that they need to do, it's clean up the penalties as well. False starts, leading the way for the Washington Commanders in penalties, and then holding. And Dan Quinn specifically on Wednesday even pointing to holding calls on run plays. Zero reason to get hold calls on run plays. One thing when you get beat off the edge and you're like, oh no, I need to save my quarterback's life. Let me reach out here and grab this guy by the jersey. Okay. But holding penalties on run plays, those are even more unforgivable. So a lot of mistakes to clean up there on both sides, apparently. But we will see if the Washington Commanders can get on a little bit of a climb in this roller coaster season. And if they do, Matt, I have a feeling your audience is going to be on a little bit more of a dip than they may already be, even at 5-3.
Check out David over at Locked On Commanders. Check out Matt over at Locked On Lions, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. The last 4 p.m. game here, it is the Arizona Cardinals and the Seattle Seahawks. A lot of good divisional matchups this weekend. Cardinals, they're rolling with Jacoby Brissett after placing Kyler Murray on IR. Meanwhile, the Seahawks are flying around under head coach Mike Macdonald. So Corbin Smith of Locked On Seahawks and Alex Clancy of Locked On Cardinals talk about if Jacoby Brissett can get the win or if Sam Darnold will continue his hot streak.
Entering the final stretch run here, Locked On crossover Thursday, Locked On Seahawks, Locked On Cardinals. I'm Corbin Smith, host of the Locked On Seahawks podcast. He's Alex Clancy, Locked On Cardinals. And even though we are doing podcasts for NFC West rivals, we always have an absolute blast when we get Locked On Seahawks and Locked On Cardinals together. And now we get to dive into the keys to victory or keys to success. Maybe you don't want to give away your predictions, so to speak, but the keys for the Arizona Cardinals and the Seattle Seahawks coming into this game. And I'm going to pick your brain first. Let's talk about Jacoby Brissett and this Arizona Cardinals offense, because as we've discussed earlier, it is a different offense in the way they are going to attack the Seahawks with Jacoby Brissett playing that position. But looking at this tough task going to Seattle against a hot Seahawks team, what do you think the Cardinals need to do offensively to be able to come to the Pacific Northwest and pull off one of those classic upsets that they have done in the past at Lumen Field?
Keep Jacoby Brissett standing. Keep him off the turf. Keep him off the ground. Because here's the thing. His depth, again, as I mentioned, his depth of target is far considerably deeper than with Kyler Murray. So it's not these quick passes. With that said, they've got to implement a little quick pass action to be able to keep him upright and not have to worry about screaming around the edge, whoever it's going to be. Just keeping the ball moving, but it doesn't always have to be 7 or 10, 15, 20 yards down the field. The short to intermediate space in the middle of the field needs to be exploited, and they've got the perfect skill set of guys to do it. It's not just Marvin, it's not just Trey. Michael Wilson is a very underrated receiver in this league who just hasn't gotten the targets because the offense was sputtering. Greg Dortch is an electric game changer. When he gets the ball in his hands, he doesn't need much space. That's it. It's him not holding onto the ball as long by changing the plays from time to time where you can get that quick release, the quick slants, things like that to get positive yardage and not let the pass rush get home.
And I'm going to counter from a Seahawks defensive perspective here. Mike Macdonald this season has not had to blitz much. As I mentioned, they're near the bottom of the league in blitz rate. And I didn't expect them to come out and blitz Jacoby Brissett 40% on Sunday. I'm not expecting that because he's a seasoned vet who has seen a lot of different looks. With that being said, with the issues Arizona has had on the right side of their line, in particular, missing some of the players like Tip Ryman who can help with their chipping and stuff.
Yep.
This is going to be a game where I think Mike Macdonald, especially against a quarterback that isn't a statue, but he isn't like a super mobile QB either. This is going to be a game where Mike Macdonald is going to put on that mad scientist cap a little bit, and he's going to say, okay, Arizona, we think we can win with our front four, but can you handle Nick Emanwari, Devin Witherspoon? And I'm going to throw a name out here that Cardinals fans maybe aren't too familiar with, but Drake Thomas, man. Drake Thomas is playing great football the last 4 or 5 games for Seattle, and he is an outstanding blitzer from the linebacker position. I think Mike Macdonald is going to be a little bit more aggressive, not like he's suddenly going to turn into the Blitzburg Steelers or anything, but I think he is going to be a little more aggressive to try to speed that clock up a little bit for Jacoby Brissett, because as we mentioned earlier, the interceptions haven't been a problem, but one of the reasons Jacoby Brissett has not lasted as a starter in this league at multiple stops is because of fumbles and getting sacked and having issues holding on to the football. If Seattle can accelerate that clock a little bit, and they might be able to do that consistently with just their front four. They've been doing that this year. But I have a feeling that this is going to be a game that Devin Witherspoon being fully healthy, and Arizona hasn't seen Nick Emanwari yet. That is a team T1000 in a football uniform. Like, this is going to be the first time they've seen that. So I'm really curious how Arizona handles that, because I have a feeling, even if it's not blitzes and it's sim pressures, Mike Macdonald is going to do some things to try to speed that clock up a little bit early. And if Seattle can get a lead and they're able to sick those guys on Jacoby Brissett, then that makes it harder for them to run the offense that excels with what Brissett has done this year.
Yeah, no, that's right. That's right. And I mean, when push comes to shove, and Sam Darnold's been elite for the last year and then half of this year so far. Sam Darnold, when pressured, has had a proclivity in his life as an NFL player to throw some bad balls. I'm not saying he's done it lately because he's been great. He's matured into this graduation level that nobody really ever thought existed. If you did, after seeing him for the first handful of years, you're lying to yourself and to me. Don't be a liar. Okay. Like Jacoby Brissett, same kind of thing. Getting pressure on the quarterback, as you mentioned, is the best way to force turnovers. It's usually the only way, unless there's, in open field, strip sack, peanut punch, whatever it is. Who wins the turnover battle? If this game is probably 65-35 Seahawks, I would think around there, 62-38, something like that. Turnovers can flip that very, very quickly. Doesn't matter if it's special teams. It doesn't matter if it's, just a drop ball or if it's getting pressure on the quarterback and making him make a bad throw. Turnovers in a game like this will tell the story at the end of the game. If there's no turnovers on either side, you got to give Seattle the nod. If Cardinals turn Seattle over twice and Seattle doesn't turn the Cardinals over at all, we're having a completely different conversation. Added possessions in games like this are what make or break and what allows an inferior opponent to win games if they can win that turnover battle.
Yeah, and I think that's been maybe the biggest issue that Seattle has had to deal with in the couple losses that they've had. They have had too many turnovers. I mean, and even the win over Houston, they had 4 turnovers in that game.
Gross game.
And they still put up 27 points on the number 1 scoring defense. And that tells you what Sam Darnold's been doing. Like, even if he makes a few mistakes, it's like, oh, well, I'm calm, cool, collected. I'm going to go out and throw a 70-yard bomb to JSN. Like, that's what he's been doing all year. And the biggest difference with him from this year to last year in Minnesota, I've made this joke, and now that Halloween's passed, it's probably not funny anymore, but I keep saying it because I think it's funny. He used to talk about seeing ghosts. Now he's a ghost buster. The dude just, when pressure comes after him, he doesn't blink. Like, he's thrown 4 or 5 touchdowns this year while he was getting blasted, and he's made perfect throws. Like,
I think one was against the Cardinals. Yeah.
He's turned a new leaf, and he's just a different dude, and he's playing with so much confidence. But I look at this game for Seattle. We can talk turnovers. That's always big in every game.
Yeah.
Seattle's best game running the football this year, I can't believe I'm saying it because Arizona's run defense is pretty darn good, but Seattle ran the football really well in that game on Thursday Night Football. And they have been so up and down. Like, they're in the top 10 in the league in explosive runs, in rushing touchdowns, but they're number 1 in negative rushes. Like, they have been at both ends of the spectrum. There's been no mid-ground. And they're trying to find more consistency with that run game. But I think for Seattle to win this game, especially with some of the new players that are healthy for Arizona, I don't think you're going to be able to just wing the ball over the field. Like, they're going to have to run the football effectively again the way they did. And I think that Rashid Shaheed fits into that too, mixing in a couple of end arounds or jet sweeps to try to get the Cardinals playing more horizontal and then start to attack the middle, because that's what they did against Arizona that first matchup, and it worked really well. They were then able to start getting the passing game humming. So this is a game that they absolutely – and look, they got to do this. If they want to be a Super Bowl contender, which they believe they can be, the run game's got to be better than what it has been. It doesn't need to be a top 5 run game, but they need to be better than they have been to this point with wild inconsistency. This is a game that they can take a positive step forward, and if they don't, and Arizona can make him one-dimensional, even as great as Sam Darnold has played, as great as the O-line has played protecting him, like, Arizona's got the horses to turn that narrative upside down in this game. Yeah. So I think running the football for Seattle and being effective enough, keep those heavy boxes coming so they can take their shots, that has been the recipe that teams just haven't been able to figure out. And that's a scary thing. If Seattle starts running the ball better, what are you going to do? Pick your own poison type thing. This is the game where you can take that step forward in that run game. And I think you're going to have to be able to handle Arizona's talented defense at all 3 levels.
Yeah. And the last thing I'll say, because all that's right, is luckily the Cardinals are playing Rashid Shaheed after Baker Mayfielding this playbook for 4 days, like Baker did. Well, he did it like 2 with the Rams, but like, this is the best time to play Rashid Shaheed because he's not going to know the playbook. Like, he's not going to thrive until maybe next week, which is not a Cardinals.
And I'm going to push back on that, Alex, because he just talked today. Like, this offense, he played in it last year with Clint Kubiak in New Orleans.
Oh, that's right. Oh, so I stand corrected.
I don't expect it. I mean, they might not be able to play an entire game like with him, but he is going to know. He's going to know the bread and butter stuff.
I forgot about that.
So
I forgot about that.
It's a very different. That doesn't happen very often. It's a very different scenario.
Yeah. No, that's weird. That's wild. And then the second thing is, as long as Zach Charbonnet's on the field, I'm comfortable playing against this run offense. I don't understand why we're shoving Zach Charbonnet down your throat unless it's like a Mike Tolbert roll inside the 10-yard line. Kenneth Walker is by far the more talented back. I don't understand it. I'm
He's
good
more
with it.
talented. He drives
understand.
you absolutely nuts, though, sometimes with his vision and not making his reads correct. Like it drives, as a running back coach and running back myself, it drives. Like if I had hair to pull out, I'd be pulling it out. He's incredibly talented. I agree with you. But it's just, I think Clay Kubiak is another coach that's kind of had issues. Something like, I know Zach Charbonnet is going to read his keys correctly. And the issue is they haven't used Charbonnet right a lot of this year. They've been doing a lot of pitch plays and stuff. And it's like, dude, running between the tackles, that's where he's a monster. He is a downhill battering ram. Like you could run inside zone and split zone like a boss with him. But then we're going to run 3 straight sweeps, and 2 of them are going to be the short side of the field. What are you doing? So I understand what fans are frustrated about, but I can understand. Like, I think Charbonnet is a better player than a lot of people realize, but they just don't maximize what he does
Maybe
well.
that's what it is.
So it's just that run game. Like if Seattle figures out that run game, this is an incredibly dangerous team going towards January. Like they've got time to get it figured out, but they got to figure it out in this game, because I think if you're not running the football well, like I said, I just think Arizona, I fear them more with Jacoby Brissett than I do with Kyler Murray.
I don't know what the hell's going to happen, Corbin. That's hashtag analysis. I have no idea what the hell's going to happen.
I don't either. Like I don't do my predictions till the Friday show, and like I'm going to be staying up tonight. Like who the hell's winning this game? Just because you've made some very compelling arguments to go with what I've seen in film, and I just, like I said, I just think this Cardinals team they're scarier to me without Kyler Murray under center. I don't fear them when number 1 is in there. Jacoby Brissett is running a competent offense that attacks the entire field. And a lot of times when you play Kyler Murray, it's like, well, this big chunk of the middle, I don't have to do crap here. Like it really changes things. So this is going to be, I have a feeling this is going to be a barn burner on Sunday.
Be sure you check out Corbin over at Locked On Seahawks and Alex over at Locked On Cardinals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. 4 p.m. slate of games, that's checked off, but don't go anywhere because we still have a couple of really good primetime games to get into. We got a lot coming your way here on the Ultimate NFL Pregame Show. This episode is brought to you by PrizePicks. You and I make decisions every day, but on PrizePicks, being right can get you paid. Don't miss any of the excitement of this sports season, whether you're following the NFL, NBA, or both. There's no better time to jump in on the action. If you haven't tried it yet, PrizePicks is the simplest way to play. Just pick more or less on at least 2 player stats, and if you get them right, you win. It takes less than 60 seconds to make your lineup. You can play anywhere PrizePicks operates, including California, Texas, and Georgia. Now, I've been using PrizePicks during both football Sundays and NBA tip-offs. It keeps every game exciting, and I like picking my favorite players like Lamar Jackson, Nikola Jokic, to see how my predictions play out. The new Stacks feature, it's a game changer. You can now pick more on Steph Curry's points, threes, and assists in the same lineup. Plus, if one of your players leaves early with an injury, the injury reboot saves my lineup from a loss. Download the PrizePicks app today and use code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONNFL for $50 in lineups after your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, it's good to be right. Moving right along on the Ultimate NFL Pregame Show, Kevin Oestreicher still rocking out with you here, diving into all of Week 10's NFL action with the help of our local experts across the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We've done the 1 p.m. games, the early slate. We've done the 4 p.m. games, the later afternoon slate. Let's dive into some prime time madness, starting off on Sunday Night Football. The Pittsburgh Steelers and the Los Angeles Chargers. This game, I think, could have massive playoff implications, especially maybe when it comes down to the wild card spot. Pittsburgh in the lead for the division right now, but Baltimore could be hot on their tail. Meanwhile, for the Chargers, they have to deal with the Chiefs and the Broncos in the AFC West. So Chris Carter of Locked On Steelers, as well as Daniel Wade of Locked On Chargers, talk about which team's going to come out with a big win.
All right, Chris. Well, I think history has told us that there's a good chance that this is going to be a good matchup, but I do think on both sides of things here, there are going to be certain things, at least for the Chargers, I know, if they don't get it done, they're going to lose. And that's the whole point of this segment. And I think when you're talking about the keys to victory, that's what you're getting into. You kind of already touched on one of the ones I'm going to get into as well in the matchups. But where would you go with the 3 things you think the Steelers have to do to get the big-time win on Sunday Night Football?
I think it's kind of what we talked about. They'll live up to their defensive philosophy. They believe in stuffing the run. That leads to rushing the quarterback. And if they take away the primary reads, rushing the quarterback causes chaos, and that leads to turnovers. So the Steelers, number one, have to stuff the runs so that they can get to creating their turnovers. That is just a huge process of how they operate. One thing that Mike Tomlin acknowledged on Tuesday when we talked to him about the Chargers is he said that, hey, the last time we played these guys,
Justin Herbert was hobbled before he even got to the game. And so he acknowledged that like his mobility is dangerous and it's something the Steelers have to monitor. And so that's another thing the Steelers have to get ready for. And granted, Daniel Jones can be a mobile quarterback. You know, they were able to stand with him, but he knows that Justin Herbert's a bit different of a quarterback than Daniel Jones. So I think that's going to be a big part of it is, live up to that defensive philosophy, but be aware that of what Justin Herbert is going to want to do to try to cancel you out and have those counters ready to go. And I think that's what's going to get tricky with this game is with the Steelers' recent adjustments. How much do the Chargers buy into, okay, they are going with 2 high safety looks. Let's try these things to open that up. And then if they are able to hit on a couple things, how do the Steelers adjust to that? That's going to be that chess match that I think could be really interesting. So stuff the run, to get to your defensive philosophy. But I think also on offense, I think the Steelers could really use their run game to get back to working, because when the run game's working, it then opens everything else up in the passing game. And if the Chargers are able to stuff the run, it's going to be interesting to see what matchups the Steelers think they can win in the passing game. Aaron Rodgers, has been good at finding guys, but like one thing I asked him about on Wednesday in the Steelers locker room was about like, the balance of spreading the ball around. And we'll talk more about this for Locked On Steelers listeners. I'll talk more about this with Mike DeFabo on our Friday episode. But he talked about the importance of like, you just need to hit where the defense isn't. He's like, you find the open man, and him believing that philosophy and not trying to force balls to guys just because he thinks DK Metcalf should get the ball or he thinks Darnell Washington should get the ball or anything like that. That I think is a big part of what the Steelers hope can manifest in this offense. So if they can manifest that in this offense in just hitting the Chargers where they're not, they can do enough damage on offense that if it combines with that turnover formula that they like to create, that can be your ticket to taking control of this game on the road, taking the energy out of the crowd in LA and kind of giving the Steelers a chance to control the pace of this game.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I'll start with, the one you just touched on there, which is just the turnover battle. And like for the Chargers, I think in certain games, it's more important than others, right? Like last week against the Titans, they could afford, to have a pick, even a pick 6 like they had in that game. And they still were able to win and win comfortably with, the Titans really never having a chance in the fourth quarter. This isn't one of those games, right? And every game, it has a different level of importance. It's always important. But this game, I think it's absolutely pivotal. And I think why it's so important in this game is because of the matchup they have with the Steelers, who have been incredibly good, to your point, at taking the football away. They rank second in the NFL. You said it. They're averaging 2 a game, 16 in 18 games. Obviously, when you have 6 in 1 week, like you had last week, right? That's going to boost those numbers a little bit, and it shows you exactly, even if you're, the hottest team in football, like the Colts are, you can't survive that. For the Chargers, there's way less margin for error than the Colts have, right? So to win the turnover battle in this game is a must for them to have a chance. It doesn't even guarantee them a win necessarily. And I think the one thing we didn't touch on yet is to be careful of the tip balls, right? 6 times this year, Justin Herbert has had a tipped or batted ball intercepted. That's terrible luck. I mean, I think, Patrick Mahomes has like 12 and like none of them have been intercepted. Either way, you're going up against a team. Cam Hayward has 5 of those by himself. Go back to the last game and watch it. He had 2 of them in the first half that turned into big plays or turnovers for the Steelers. So the Chargers have to be aware of that. And the Chargers also have given the ball away 12 times, which is 10th worst in the league so far this year. It's been since week 1 that the Chargers haven't given the football away. If there was ever a week to get back on track in that regard, it's this week. And if not, it might cost them the game. My second thing here, special teams has to show up. Go back to look at the Steelers game last week. They didn't end up scoring on it, but one of the things that kind of felt like it shifted that game was the muffed punt that the Colts had in it. Steelers end up taking over. The Chargers can't afford that. Last week, you give a 63-yard punt return touchdown to the Titans. You get down 14-7 in a game you had no business being 14-7 down in. And for the Chargers, statistically, they've been the worst special teams unit in football. 32nd in coverage and punts, 32nd on kickoff coverage. It doesn't get worse than that. And like, to be the worst special teams in the league and have the best kicker statistically in NFL history is almost impressive if it wasn't so frustrating. The Steelers had a big return to open things up last week. It has to be good. With what the Chargers are dealing with offensively, they cannot afford for their special teams not to be good. They're just not, it's not a way that they can afford to win. And of course, I touched on it a little bit earlier. Keep Justin Herbert alive. Like if Justin Herbert is in this game, you have a chance. When you don't have a chance is last year when the Chargers offense was already not looking great. But as soon as he left, so did every chance of the Chargers winning that game. I mean, Trey Lance has no chance to get this done. This isn't a roster that can win with the backup quarterback. Justin Herbert has to play. Justin Herbert has to be special. And last year, going into it, Justin Herbert was banged up, but Rashawn Slater and Joe Alt both at least started that game. They also both left the game with injuries in that one, so you lost Justin Herbert and Slater and Joe Alt, and you don't even have part of the game with those two guys out there for this one, which is very concerning. But Justin Herbert has to make it through this game healthy. The Chargers have to win or at least be even in the turnover battle to have a chance. And their special teams, which has been anything but special, has to show up because the rest of the team just isn't good enough, Christopher, to be able to overcome it and overcompensate for it, especially against the Steelers team, which I think is good. And they're going to need to have their A game to get it done.
One thing I'll say for Chargers fans to hold on to, and I know a lot of Steelers fans are going to resonate with this, is that just having backup tackles does not doom you against the Steelers pass rush if you can get that quick passing game going. The Steelers have had several games in the past years where teams knew that's not the matchup we want to go with. Let's get the ball out quick. Let's find creative ways to run the football, and that'll slow down TJ Watt and Cam Hayward and those guys from being able to just fire off the ball and get it. But if you are the Chargers and you can't get that run game going, and all of a sudden you got a lot of 3rd and 7s, 3rd and 8s, 3rd and 9s, and then you're not getting the quick read off the line of scrimmage, and you got to wait 4 or 5 seconds before someone gets open, that plays right into the Steelers' hands. I think Jim Harbaugh, his coaching staff, they've got to get a plan together that knocks the Steelers off of their schedule, that finds a way to get 2nd and short, 3rd and short consistently, and then in those still don't hold on to the ball too long. Trust that they're coming for you, or if you do, it's because you rolled Justin Herbert out and you bought him time naturally to find open guys. I think that's got to be the priority. Like you said, don't let him get killed. If he does get killed, it destroys the Steelers feed off of this energy. That's the other thing. Like when they get, it's like when they get 1 and they get 2, it comes in bunches, man, because then they start like feeding off each other. Everyone wants to do it. And it's something that to take away the energy of the Steelers, you have to make them feel like they can't get those turnovers. And so, again, it's doable. It's not impossible, even with the backup tackle situation, but you need Justin Herbert to be on his smartest day, and you need to come up with a game plan that gives him good, quick read options, keys to feed off of. But it'll be interesting to see, because the keys that you would have had for the Steelers for the last 8, what are the records? 5-3 in the last 7 games before last week are going to be completely different from the keys that you probably came if you watched the last week. And so the Steelers can even have a choice themselves. Like, how often do we kind of stick to the game plan we had last week? Do we go back and forth? That's, again, I think this game comes down to that chess match. Where does Justin Herbert find the weaknesses in the Steelers defense, especially in the quick passing game? If that is not there for the Chargers, I think this puts them in a really tough spot.
Yeah, and it'll be interesting to see, like if they try to keep the Chargers off balance by going back to what they did before a little bit more. But I do think that a team, especially blitzing less, like Justin Herbert has diced up the Vikings and Brian Flores because they love to blitz too much. Justin Herbert's great against the blitz. Where he really has problem are the teams that don't have to blitz to get to him, and the Steelers check that box off. So, that's what I'm doing. If I'm the Steelers, I'm not trying to get too cute. I am trying to confuse the offensive line that's easily confusable, but I am not trying to do too much to try to get pressure. The pressure will come, and it's up to, and I don't think Chargers fans have a ton of faith and Greg Roman to have the creative enough game plan to be able to keep the Steelers on their toes. But when these guys have gotten injured, because Joe Alt's been in and out of the lineup all year, Rashawn Slater's been gone all year. You're 6-3, right? So you've had to deal with these things. This isn't a new problem. It's just a new matchup with specifically new monsters that are on the other side of things. So I think when these things have been down, Greg Roman has leaned more into the creativity in the running game, and although Jonathan Taylor wasn't able to do it, the Chargers will have that task for themselves this week to keep themselves ahead of the sticks, because I know that'll be part of my Friday show tomorrow, because if you're not ahead of the sticks against this team, this defense is going to eat you alive.
Be sure to check out Daniel over at Locked On Chargers and Chris over at Locked On Steelers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Monday Night Football, the Philadelphia Eagles and the Green Bay Packers. I have a feeling that these two teams might match up again in January, but this is round 1 potentially of round 2. So you have Lou DiBiase of Locked On Eagles, and you have Peter Bukowski of Locked On Packers talking about which NFC contender will be able to get the victory over the other.
All right, Locked On Packers, Locked On Eagles, a crossover Thursday. If the Eagles are going to win, Lou, it's going to be because of what?
I think for me, it's getting an early lead and continuing to win the turnover battle. Jalen Hurts this year has the best touchdown interception ratio. He's on pace for, actually, at this point, over 40 total touchdowns passing and rushing, and only a few interceptions, which is really unbelievable. Even though he's had, the first 6 games were pretty inconsistent. I think being able to keep this team not playing with really bad field position has been really important. So against the Green Bay Packers, one of the top 4 teams in the NFC, I think it's, again, these two, and then you could probably argue like LA or Tampa Bay or Detroit, whoever else you want to throw in there. Like, this is the cream of the crop in the NFC, and it's a super important game. I think getting an early lead and not losing the turnover battle like they did. I mean, you look at that first game against the Packers last year in the opener in Brazil, when McKinney and Alexander had interceptions. Yep. The Eagles kind of had to play a little bit of catch up there in the first half. So I think that was part of what changed Jalen Hurts' overall approach. I know it sounds cliche, but getting a lead and winning the turnover battle, it's been so key for the Eagles and their success over the last couple of years. This team just plays so much better from up top when they have a lead and they can just run down your throat in the second half. And I just think when they have to play from behind and they have to be a high volume passing offense, sometimes they'll have big games like the last couple weeks, but I don't think that's their true identity of who they are. And so they've been a great first quarter offense. That's the one thing Kevin Patullo's done really well this year consistently is start fast. I think that needs to be a key again on Monday night.
Yeah, and this Packers defense has been outstanding in the first quarter. I think they've allowed 1 first quarter touchdown this season.
Wow. So yeah, strength on strength there.
And so,
wow.
yeah, no question about it. And like I joke about no coach has ever said, I want us to start slow. Right. But some teams are just better than others at actually, following through on that. I feel a little bit like, a dope because every week I come on Locked On Packers and I say the Packers can't turn the ball over. And that's the key. And it's just like, there's a reason that every coach in every locker room from time immemorial has said, we have to protect the ball.
Right.
And this is a Packers team that has the fewest giveaways in the NFL this season. That might seem crazy, but that's true. Given some of the high variance throws that Jordan Love is willing to make, they had the giveaways last week, and that was the key. They could not generate the takeaways, and they had 2 giveaways, one of them in the red zone. Like, you just can't make those mistakes. This is going to be a game where Jordan Love is going to have to stay patient, and they're going to have to be judicious with the way that they're going to take shots down the field. It has to be, you can't just don't go broke taking a profit. If they're going to play too high and you're going to have the run game working, keep running the ball. One of the reasons why the Packers are the best third down team in the NFL this year is because they have the shortest distance to go on third down this season. They are consistently in these 3rd and 4s, 3rd and 3s, 3rd and 5s. It's like not quite 3rd and short all the time. They don't have an explosive pass or running game, and that's the problem. But they'll regularly get you 3-4 yards. And if you even if you run, which I hate, but let's say you do that.
Same.
It's consistently 3rd and 3. And so that makes life easier for you. Jordan Love, one of the reasons why he doesn't have crazy touchdown numbers, one of the reasons why he's the EPA king right now in the NFL is because all they do is convert third down. They were 7 of 13 last week. If you look at the underlying numbers last week, 5 trips to the red zone, they don't punt. They're 7 of 13 on third down. They win the time of possession battle and they lose the game. That stuff is just that's crazy. That's not going to happen. I'd like to see the Packers be a little bit more aggressive on early downs, throwing the ball, getting to their play action game. It's where they're really good. And I do think they have an advantage in this game in that you mentioned Quinyon Mitchell. I think against corners like that, where you can't play favorites, I think sometimes that has a defense going well, this is one of our best things where we can just put Quinyon on your guy and then you got to figure something else out. Well, the Packers have an egalitarian style of offense to start with. And so then what is the counter? They're not going to be afraid to throw at Quinyon Mitchell. Sometimes I wish Jordan Love would not trust Romeo Doubs against those guys. He trusted Romeo Doubs against JC Horn a couple of times last week. And I'm can you not try and find somewhere else? But there were also times when I felt like Aaron Rodgers, Mike McCarthy, they were too afraid of Richard Sherman. They were too afraid of Darrelle Revis. And so the Packers have to find that balance in this game.
Yeah, that's a good point. Quinton Mitchell, by the way, this year, I mean, throwing at him, though, has not worked out.
No.
The third most snaps that he's allowed less than 1 yard of separation. Sauce Gardner, only one of two guys ahead of him. So, I mean, yeah, overall, I think a lot of this comes down to, too, I mean, both rosters are so talented. I don't think this is going to be a blowout on either end. It's the fourth quarter. I mean, I think both games against these two teams last year came down to who's more buttoned up in the fourth quarter, and that's something the Eagles are really good at. So I think overall this is going to be a fun battle, a chess match of two teams that have seen, like Peter, we talked about earlier, we feel like we've done this show together 1,000 times because they've seen each other a lot. And so I am curious how this game, the game plan will differ from last year's two matchups. So I'm excited about that.
There's plenty of film for both of these coaches to go over.
Yeah.
And I think that also makes this interesting. Matt LaFleur has been really, really good against opponents that he gets to see a lot. You see a team a second time like last year. Or 2023 is a great example. Like they get blown out by the Vikings and the Lions, and they come out in the second half of the season and blow those teams back out. And so it's just like they are good when they get multiple opportunities. Jordan Love at a players' dinner after the game on Sunday, already talking about revenge games. Like the Packers want this game. I expect them to show up. I expect this game to be close. And I know it's like after seeing the Packers against the Panthers, it's weird that FanDuel has installed them as 2.5-point favorites. But like I think if this game were in Philly, the Eagles would be 2.5-point favorites. Like I think that's a fair way to look at this.
That's why this game's so important too, Peter, because the 1 seed, I think, for both of these teams is crucial. Playing in Lambeau in January or at the Link, like those are two of the hardest places to play in the playoffs. So the Eagles have already gotten wins over the Rams and Buccaneers, who you'll be competing for that top seed. They play Green Bay and Detroit these next two games. Like this is a big opportunity for both sides in that way as well.
And the Packers already have the win over Detroit. So,
so
that's
the head-to-heads are huge.
Big thing. There's going to be another game against Detroit. This is really their last NFC team that they have to take down that they haven't already beaten, right? Like they don't play the Bucks, they don't play the Rams, and so this is kind of their last chance. I can't forget about the Seahawks, by the way, who are playing awesome football.
True.
And so this is I can't wait for this game. I think this game is going to be a classic, and I think it's going to be a lot of fun. And I think the Packers are going to win. I'm sure you think the Eagles are going to win, and that's great. I genuinely think we are going to be sitting here in January doing this again, Lou. And I can't wait to do it with you.
Probably.
Peter's great. Check him out over at Locked On Packers. Louis great. Check him out over at Locked On Eagles, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. That's all I have for you here today on the Ultimate NFL Pregame Show. Thank you so much for tuning in, spending some time with us here today. We'll be back here next week talking about all of the great Week 11 matchups that are in store. So be sure to go support all of our local experts here on the Locked On Podcast Network and tune in to see their post-game reactions and how they felt the games went for their team. So thank you again for being here. On the way out, be sure to like and subscribe button wherever you are watching or listening to this. And of course, enjoy your Sunday, enjoy your football, and enjoy your weekend. We'll see you right back here soon on the Ultimate NFL Pregame Show.